Brenda Logan to come in. If anybody wants to speak tonight, our town clerk, Chris Sampson, is going to hand out the form. Just sign your name and your address, and you'll be able to speak.
They're free.
Public hearing, people can speak for as long as they want. We would ask if people try to keep it to 5 minutes. And if you want to speak again later, you'll be able to speak again later. If you spoke at the first public hearing, you certainly can speak again at this public hearing. And as we said last meeting, we will not be taking any action on this this evening. We'll probably have another public hearing as well, so people will be able to be heard. Brenda's in the park. Thank God for small things. Yeah. I'd like to ask our town clerk, Christian Sampson, to call the roll.
Councilman Ullman? Councilman Friedman?
Here.
Councilwoman Charles?
Here.
Councilman Withers? Supervisor St. Lawrence?
Here. I'd like to ask Councilwoman Brenda Logan Charles to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first item on our agenda tonight is a public hearing, a continuation of a public hearing. And as I mentioned, this public hearing will be continued again to January, in the beginning of January. We have a Phase 2, supplement Phase 2 questions that our planner has asked of the applicants. We'll have our planner talk about that a little bit. And then the applicant will have to come back with their Phase 3, their reply to that. and we'll have another public hearing on that as well. I just want people to know that Deputy Supervisor Withers had to be in New Jersey tonight, and Councilman Ullman is flying back from Los Angeles, so his flight was delayed. So they will not be here, but this is on video, and they will be able to watch this and be able to hear, and I would guarantee you they will watch this to hear everyone's comments. So with that, once again, the ground rules are you can speak for as long as you'd like. We'd like you to limit it to 5 minutes. If you need to speak longer than that, a couple more minutes, there's no problem. We're not going to put the clock on you, but we'd like to get everybody in a timely way to be able to speak. If you then have more things that you want to ask, you certainly can, or want to put on the record, you're welcome to do that. And we will stay here as long as people want to speak. With that, I'll ask our town attorney, Michael Klein, to put anything into the record that has come in since the last public hearing.
Yes, Mr. Supervisor, we've received a few documents which I'll mark as exhibits and read into the record. Marked into evidence as exhibit number 17 will be a letter dated October 27th, 2014 from the County of Rockland, Sewer District Number 1. Exhibit 18 will be a letter dated January 10th, 2012 from Stacy M. Jensen of the Army Corps of Engineers. Exhibit number 19 will be an air quality assessment report dated October 20th, 2014 from Potenta Environmental Consultants, LLC. Exhibit number 20 is a noise impact assessment report dated October 20th, 2014 from Potenta Environmental Consultants, LLC. Exhibit number 21 is proposed comprehensive plan amendment draft dated December 8th, 2014. And finally, exhibit number 22 is a traffic impact study last revised May 30th, 2014 by Harry Baker and Associates. So that concludes the exhibits that we've received thus far.
Okay. And as I mentioned, Council, when we hold this meeting over, it will be to January. Our next meeting is on the 18th of this month. It's during the day. It's our police commission meeting and town board meeting, and we want it to be in the evening. So we'll hold it off into January. Our regular scheduled meeting of December 24th has been canceled. So with that, I think we will have the applicant come up and answer some, I guess, some questions and say whatever they want about the project, and then we'll have our planner from Frederick P. Carr come up. So, Mr. Carbon.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor, members of the Town Council. Good evening. Not to repeat everything that we discussed in the last instance. So I really did, and I know there's going to be additional comments, and I know that Mr. Lang has a report, and we will submit a written response to all of the issues that you and your colleagues identify. But I do think that it is important off the bat to just make it very clear that there are no 6-bedroom apartments, there are no 5-bedroom apartments, there are no 4-bedroom apartments. As you can, we have floor plans here which reflect the size of the units. The units are around 1,200 square feet and contain, most of them, 3 bedrooms. And there will be 2-bedroom, I think maybe I have a 2-bedroom model also. But those plans are available for your review. And it has been needlessly divisive and inflammatory to run all over Rockland County claiming that thousands and thousands of people are going to invade some piece of property based on flawed assumptions. The environmental analysis that was prepared by Mr. Clark, that Mr. Lang, your planner, recommended, accounted for very, very high build-out conditions for the purposes of making sure that the drainage and other analysis was enough, and the same that the traffic analysis was enough. So there were assumptions that were built into that to make sure that the analysis was valid. But I can't speak for the other property owner that's seeking a change in the zoning. But with respect to the application of Monsey lumber, the maximum number of bedrooms in any unit that we have proposed is 3. So the four bedrooms?
Two in the apartment, could be 4 upstairs.
Up to 4, I'm sorry, up to 4. So the notion of these massive 6-bedroom apartments that has been paraded out there, I don't know if it's intentionally not accurate, but it's not accurate. And unfortunately, that assumption has created a basis for concern, and there's always concern about a project, and that's legitimate, but you have to measure that concern based on the information. And unfortunately, that projection has been the basis for various comments that have come in from other agencies, and it's based on a false premise. So I think it's very important, Mr. Supervisor and members of the board, to recognize up front that that is the case, and that the projections that have been made based on fantastic bedroom numbers are that's just not the case, and the board should be aware of that. And rather than getting involved in the political propaganda, we should look at the project itself very carefully. In response to some of the feedback that we heard at the last hearing, Mr. Ziegler did undertake some revisions. There was a notion expressed in terms of coming into with a new zone and how that would affect existing bulk zoning standards, and Mr. Ziegler will explain how all of that has been rectified as well as a full discussion of the drainage. But we have been asked as I understand it, if the board adopts the Part 2, to provide additional information about the drainage plan. There's additional information that was requested from us with respect to traffic circulation of the roadway. Mr. Baker, our traffic engineer, is here if you want to hear from him directly, but we'll be happy to provide that information as well. And there was also a request from the town for us to submit a map which showed the density. There are 3 municipalities that intersect in this particular area: the town of Ramapo, the village of Spring Valley, and the town of Clarkstown, and to line out the densities that exist in those various neighborhoods. And as we touched on briefly at the last hearing, the density proposed here is consistent with densities that have been supported in all of those adjacent municipalities, including the village of Spring Valley, as well as the town of Clarkstown. So the density that's recommended here would be consistent with other zoning designations in municipalities that abut the town of Ramapo. But I would ask, with your permission, Mr. Supervisor, if Mr. Ziegler could speak to the design changes that we have made to try to begin to accommodate those concerns. But given that I anticipate we're going to hear additional comments tonight and that we're going to be getting a written Part 2, I think that the bulk of our response is probably best reserved for a January meeting.
Okay, and that's fair, but I would think it would be important to not just have Mr. Ziegler, but have your drainage and your traffic people make a short presentation as well, because there may be people here that weren't at the first meeting.
Sure.
Okay.
Why don't we have Mr. Ziegler go first, then Mr. Jackson can discuss the drainage, and Mr. Baker will
Thank you.
touch on the traffic. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Hi, Dave Ziegler from Atzel, Nasher, and Ziegler. We're doing the site design for the Pascack Ridge, and in front of the board right now is a footprint of the units. There's some confusion is because each unit we're counting as a rental or a home. So if you look at the box, there's 2. There's a rental on the bottom and then two floors of the primary home. So they would be 105 duplexes. So we're going to change the wording in this so that we can tell you that there's 105 duplexes, and each duplex will have 2 units in it. And the 2 units will be set up like this board shows it, with the lower unit being the rental with a possibility of 2 bedrooms. Then the next 2 floors, floor and a half, would be the main owner, the main family, and that would be 3 bedrooms with a possibility of 4. So it's a total of 6 bedrooms in a duplex times 105 units. The plan that we first designed is this plan where we were extending a Springbrook Road. Springbrook Road from the town line to Pascack has no other access.
So
In the very-
just to be clear of what you just said.
Yes.
So on 105 of the duplexes that would be there, 105 of them would be two-bedroom, and about
No,
1,200...
there's 105 duplexes, and in a duplex, you would have a possibly four-bedroom and a possibly two-bedroom for a maximum of six-bedroom.
Whoa, 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 whoa. No. This does not work this way, folks. No, it doesn't work this way. If you're going to speak out of turn, then you're going to leave. Okay? It's not going to be that way. I think you just said what I just said. You're saying that the duplexes, there are 105 of them, what you're calling these duplexes.
That's correct.
And in those duplexes, there's one unit that is 1,200 square feet, and then there's a second unit, which is the second and third floor, or floor and a half, you called it,
Right.
that could have four bedrooms. But
Right.
the unit downstairs would have two bedrooms. So in the total project that you're proposing of 210 units, 105 of them would be two bedrooms, and 105 of them would be three or possibly four.
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make that clear. Thank you.
All right.
Go ahead.
When we first designed this project, we were under the assumption that Springbrook should be brought through as a town road, and we were designing that from the Clarkstown line, which going out to actually ending up near Pascack. And the design that we had and been studying with the planning board and back and forth with the planner showed that as a town road. And that town road, being such, cut the property in half that required variances on this layout that we had submitted. After the last public hearing, there was quite a discussion about the town road being extended and not having it as a town road. The public wouldn't want to come through, so we are in the process of doing a new layout which would make that a private drive with emergency access into the two spurs from Clarkstown. That way, if there was an emergency between the town lines, there would be a possibility to go through, but there wouldn't be any possibility for common traffic to go back and forth.
And not to get too much into your planning, because I want you to, but just to be clear, are you saying then there would be a gate there with a Knox box that could only be utilized by fire and ambulance?
Right.
Okay.
And then that would cut down on through traffic through Springbrook.
We did have a lot of people from Springbrook
Right.
Brothers spoke.
And basically, if you take our plan, say the B neighborhood, and if you went south through Springbrook out to Pascack, that would be about 0.65 miles. If you leave neighborhood B and go out to Pascack and around, that ends up being about 9/10 of a mile. But it's actually faster because it's a major road and not through a neighborhood. So with that, we've done a new plan, which we'll submit in the Part 3, and that will adhere to the current code and not require any variances, and it will stand on itself without having any other look by any other board other than the planning board. So we'll change this plan, and that'll be part of our Part 3 for this seeker.
Okay. Thank you.
Lenny, you want me to put your map up?
Jack, are you able to get those maps on the TV? Okay, good.
I'll try to be brief. I'll just reiterate what I said in my previous presentation.
State your name for the audience.
Leonard Jackson. There are three jurisdictions that cover the work on this site with regard to the flow and the runoff into the Pascack Brook. The Rockland County Drainage Agency, New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, and the town of Ramapo. The regulations are almost the same, and it requires that the development of this project does not increase the peak rate of discharge onto the river. That means to avoid exacerbating any flooding problems on the Pascack Brook, we have to make sure that we don't increase the flooding or the discharge rate on the Pascack Brook. That's done through detention and other such measures. It was done before. As a matter of fact, the discharge rate was decreased from the site into the Pascack Brook. Just to put this into perspective, I'd like to throw out just a few numbers. We heard from someone who represented a town in New Jersey. And yes, everyone who lives along the Pascack Brook has to be concerned about flooding. But to put it in perspective, I'd like to point out that the area, the contributing drainage area in Rockland County onto the Pascack Brook is, here we are, is 6,774 acres. And of that 6,774 acres, approximately 30 of them are this site. So that's not to diminish the importance of providing a decrease in peak rate of discharge from the site, but what we have to consider, to put it in perspective, is it's 30 out of 7,000 acres. It's 0.3%. And we have to do our part in making sure that the discharge rate does not increase. Similarly, just at the site itself, we have a contributing drainage area of 1,047 acres, of which this site is 30 of them. And therefore, that's 3 in 1,000, 0.03. We have to do our part in making sure that we don't increase the peak rate of discharge from our contribution. But our contribution, of course, is 3/1,000ths of the flow, approximately, on the river. So I'd like to point out that when we do our job, we will actually decrease the peak rate of discharge on the river. Of course, we can't decrease it that much because we just only have a fraction of the contributing drainage area. But we will handle our job the way we have to avoid a cumulative impact of development over the course of the years. And that's the purpose of the law, which requires no increase in discharge rate on the river. And that's it for this project.
I just wanted you to touch on one other thing. So we have a zero discharge runoff, which means that no more runoff can come off of a project after it's built than what it is presently in its present state. So you're saying that the runoff will be a decrease of what it is
It
presently?
will be a decrease.
Would you just touch on any of the water quality?
Well, the water quality that's universal, actually. It's a New York State DEC requirement, and we have to treat the water quality. We we have to recharge some of the water into the ground, and we also have to treat it to assure that we don't decrease the quality of the water into the river. But those are standard issues. And of course, the water quality, well, it doesn't come up usually at public hearings, but yes, we have to do that. In addition to reducing the peak rate of discharge, we do have to make sure that we don't decrease the quality of the runoff from the site.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, and Mr. Carvin, is your traffic person here? Just state your name, please.
Harry Baker and Associates. You have to bear with me, I've been sick all week, so I apologize.
Going around.
I conducted a traffic study for this project. Obviously, with the changes that they've talked about tonight, we will go back and revise the study to deal with the new changes to the access points and so forth and so on. And the upshot is that we looked at the traffic during a typical weekday and also on a Sunday, midday afternoon. We counted existing traffic, looked at other projects that might be built in the area, as well as projected the traffic for this project. Based on the level of service, which is the operating condition of the intersections, when we looked both on the weekday and on the Sunday, there was no change in the operating condition from the no build to the build, which is what you have to look at to determine whether there's an impact or not. But I will go back, excuse me, and make the changes that are necessary and see if there's any changes to the results of the study. At this point, I don't want to hazard a guess one way or the other.
Okay, and are you doing studies at times when school would be?
Yes, the traffic count.
When they'd be picking kids up from school?
Yeah, the traffic
Okay.
counts were done from 7 to 9 in the morning when all the buses, in fact, when we did the traffic count, we classified the vehicles as cars, trucks, and buses, so we know how many school buses there were making any of the movements at any of these intersections.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Baker. And now we'll have our planner from Frederick P. Clark, Mr. Lang.
Supervisor, members of the board. I don't know how many of you have ever walked this property. I would doubt that many have. It's almost impassable. There's all sorts of prickly bushes. If you look at our cultural and archaeological expert, he came out with, he looked like he'd been through a ringer. His clothes were all torn. The briars really tore him apart. It's a tough site to go through. But just to give you the bearing, this is the high end, this is the low end. We have the right-of-way for the sewer, the Rockland County Sewer District's interceptor there. And when you look at the types of surrounding uses.
Can everybody hear him?
sorry.
John, will you speak
Sure.
into the...
When you look at the
Thank you.
surrounding uses, you can see that there is a great transition from single-family on the east side to multifamily on the west side. But what it looks like from the inside, this is the mighty Pascack Brook. This was in the spring. The leaves had already come out, and the flows were really pretty much a trickle. This was this fall, and you can see it's totally dry. So there's a great variability. The stream is not classified as being protected under DEC regulations. To give you more information on the character of the neighborhood, and I believe a picture's worth 1,000 words.
Just roll it over.
These are the apartments that are on Pascack Road. There's, I believe, about 20 units there total. These are the apartments above, on top on Slynn Avenue, that directly are adjacent to the property. There's certainly a lot of maintenance associated with those items, with those units. This is the right-of-way for Orange and Rockland. The sewer line goes down below it. And then this is a good example of what the majority of the property looks like where it hasn't been developed. A lot of down trees, but fairly, it could be filtered out. But you can see there's a mixture of healthy and dead trees there. And that's pretty typical. So based upon that, we had to do an analysis of what things we should be looking at in greater detail. And this is excerpt from the entire EAF. It's just the Part 2. The Part 2 says, what are the things we want the applicant to look at in greater detail? So I'm going to read them to you. Let me take this out. Number 1 says, will the proposed action create a material conflict with an adopted land use plan or zoning? And the two choices you get are, it's a moderate to large impact or it's a small impact. And we've checked that it's a moderate impact, so we want them to address that. Will the proposed action result in the change or the intensity of use? We say that's a major impact, so we check that box for that one. Will the proposed action impair the character or quality of the existing community? Potentially, yes, so we've checked that as a large. Will the proposed action have an impact on a critical environmental area? There's no one in the area, so we checked no. Will the proposed action result in an adverse change in existing level of traffic? We have traffic reports that indicate probably it hasn't, but just on the potential that it was, we want to look at that in great detail, so we checked a moderate to large impact. Will the proposed use cause an increase of energy and fail to incorporate regional energy conservation or renewable uses? I think that's a smaller impact. Based upon the new energy standards we have for building codes, building codes cover most of that, so I gave that a smaller impact. Will the proposed action impact public and private wells? Yes, it will affect public wells and water supply and wastewater treatment. Yes, it will. So we have reports that will be done there, so we've asked for additional information. Will the action impair the character or quality of important historic, archaeological, architectural, or aesthetic resources? We have a report that found nothing on the site. And that will be, as soon as we can get a copy of that from Tracker Archaeological Associates, that will be placed in the appendix, also at the town clerk's office. Will the proposed action result in an adverse change to natural resources, wetlands, water bodies, groundwater, air quality, flora, and fauna? I put that as a minor because all of the critical resources are not going to be touched. There'll be nothing done in the floodplain. There'll be nothing done on the wetlands. There'll be nothing done to historic resources because we didn't find any. So the natural resources, flora and fauna, this area has been cleared for the most part. This is secondary growth. The archaeological and cultural resources did a shovel test every 200 feet. I believe around the houses they did around 50 feet, and they came up without any significant article. So we would say we're pretty clean that we won't have to go into any further investigation on that. Will the proposed action result in an increase in the potential for erosion? This one, I think we probably could go with a large to medium. So I'm debating whether I check the right box here. So we can still require that they do the greater work on that. And the last one says, will proposed action create a hazard to environmental resources or human health? And I don't think that there's a significant impact that will come from this. So that's the part two. These are the things that we've asked them to take a look at. They'll be creating a part three and coming back to us with all these answers, and it'll be all rolled into the zone change report.
But, Mr. Lang, if I may, if you're on the fence whether to categorize one as a small impact or a moderate to large, I would suggest that you recommend the moderate to large so it can be studied. So I believe that's question number 10.
Yes.
So it would be your request to the board that that be
Modified.
checked as moderate to large?
Absolutely. Okay?
Thank you, Mr. Lang. Okay, and now we will hear, go
I'm sorry.
ahead.
Mr.
Our
Lang,
town-
there are
our
two,
town Attorney.
even though we're holding, the town board received two separate petitions from adjacent landowners, and we're conducting a joint hearing on both. Are your part twos
Identical.
for both?
They're identical.
With
If I-
question number 10, put...
We'll modify that
on
on
the
as
erosion
well.
to put to large and moderate versus minor.
If I might add one more
Sure.
thing. Just go, okay. This map shows the densities of different developments in the surrounding area. The ones that are in the pinkish color are in Clarkstown. The ones that are in the yellow color are in either Spring Valley or the town of Ramapo. And I note that there's a new project that's proposed here, and that one is in Spring Valley, and that one is going to be at 32 units an acre in Spring Valley. If you look at the existing ones, it's 10 units an acre, 17 units an acre, 16 units an acre, 36 units an acre, 30, 25, and 5. For the ones in Clarkstown, we have 4, 32, 15, 17, 16, 10, 6. So we can see that the area is not strictly a single-family home area. The surrounding area has quite a number of multiple-family dwellings. I just wanted to point that out as to determining the character of the neighborhood. It is a mixed transition area.
Mr. Lang, if I may go back just for a second. On item 9, on the impact assessment on the EF Part 2s, it appears that on the one prepared for the Colishore application, the check there is moderate to large impact may occur.
What was the number 9? I'm sorry.
Number 9, will the proposed action result in adverse change to natural resources, wetlands, water bodies, groundwater, air quality, flora, fauna? But on the Pascack, on the Monsey lumber petition, you have small to no or small impact.
Right. The Colishore portion is directly adjacent to the creek, and actually it goes on the other side of the creek, so the potential was higher there than it was on the Monsey lumber side.
So that's the
That
only
would be the only
distinction
change.
between the two?
Between the two, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lang. Okay, with that, we will now hear from everyone that is here, and our first speaker will be the Honorable Supervisor from the town of Clarkstown, Alex Gromack.
Well, good evening, and thank you, Mr. Supervisor. And I want to thank your council members, your town clerk, and your town attorney for extending us these courtesies. It's not often that other towns come to another town to raise concerns, but certainly your willingness to listen to the concerns of the town of Clarkston and its residents are heartening. We also appreciate the fact that your town attorney has been very supportive in working with our attorney, Amy Mealy, who's here tonight, to provide needed information, as well as our town planner. And we also appreciate the fact that you've indicated that this will continue to another meeting, which will give certainly more time for the town to gather some additional information. Just a couple of points before I read a prepared statement. Some of what I say may not be applicable based on some new information that came in, but we would still like to put it into the record. We'd also like to note that we still believe there's some information that our town planner, Joe Simos, is looking to receive, and perhaps I could suggest that he call your town planning department, and maybe they could sit down and just get it, because I think if we get some of that information, it certainly may clarify a lot of the concerns that he has and in the town, and start to
Absolutely.
kind of limit the scope of the discussion. But let me just state for the record that our town board is concerned about it. Councilman Homan is here. Councilwoman Shirley Lasker spoke last week, and I know Councilwoman Hausner and Borelli could not be here tonight. And in conferring with Mr. Homan, I think out of the respect for the amount of people that are here in your time, we would just read this statement, and it would cover all 5 town board members, and then allow others to speak. And certainly with another meeting, there's ample time for some additional dialogue.
And Mr. Supervisor, we did also include at the last meeting your resolution that was voted unanimously against this project, and it's part of the record of this hearing. Go right ahead.
Thank you. Well, we're here tonight as concerned residents and public officials, and we certainly had come here urging you to reject the proposed zone change, but are heartened by the fact that this will be a continuation, so that more information and the flow of discussion can continue regarding the comprehensive plan amendments that are before you tonight. As I noted, I know Councilman Homan and Councilwoman Lasker spoke at your previous meeting on behalf of the town and pointed out in their public comments at the last meeting the proposed amendments would pave the way for an extremely dense development, the Pascack Ridge subdivision, that would have significant and adverse impacts on our residents. The amendments before you tonight would rezone approximately 28.5 acre parcel adjacent to our border from medium density residential, which would have allowed for approximately 40 single family homes on a third of a lot, to a high density residential complex, which could accommodate approximately 210 units with as many as 4 to 6 bedrooms. Just one clarification, because there is a lot of talk about the 4 to 6. I know that it was discussed that there's 4 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms, and I guess the only question that I would have is 4 plus 2, 6? Is it one owner, or is it 4 and 2 separate owners?
That's a good question. I was trying to get down to that. Since it's 210 separate units, it is 3 to 4 bedrooms that are 105 units, and then separate ownership on 105 units that would be 2 bedrooms.
That is correct.
Okay.
Because, again, just so you know, the reason that I think there's a lot of talk about the 4 to 6 is that there's information that was gleaned from some of the reports, so that clarification certainly would be helpful. The town of Ramapo's current comprehensive plan, which was adopted in 2004, did not recommend any zone change in this area. Indeed, the goal of the plan stated succinctly as follows, and I quote, "to promote a balanced pattern of land use that primarily encourages the concentration of future development in areas with adequate infrastructure and facilities so as to make efficient utilization of the transportation network and infrastructure, to preserve the town's environmental and scenic resources, and to provide a variety of additional housing opportunities in areas of the town most appropriate for such such development. And again, we in Clarkstown agree with the statement in your comprehensive plan that this parcel should not have that type of a density. The town plan goes on to describe it as medium residential zoning districts, which is what the property issue here is talked about. Quote, these are areas generally represented that represent a transition from the most intense areas of Monsey and the village of Spring Valley and the lowest density subdivision areas to the west and the north of them. The majority of the properties within the zoning district are proposed to retain its current zoning designation, with the exception of a certain area within Monsey, which are designated with higher density residential land use categories in order to address the housing needs of the town. So those are statements in the comprehensive plan that we note and and realize that this is contradictory, this zone change, and certainly would like you to take particular notice to the plan. So in 2004, the town was proposing to keep this area zoned as a medium-density residential area and place the higher-density areas in other parts of the town. So I guess the question is, what has changed? What changed other than the fact that perhaps the developer has put in an application? What analysis has been done to determine the current zoning, which was upheld in the town's comprehensive planning process, is no longer appropriate for this area? As the board is aware, the town is under, of course, no legal obligation to entertain and consider an application for a zone change. There is no requirement that the matter ever be scheduled for a public hearing or be heard by a board. But having said that, we understand that this is certainly the topic of what we are all focusing on, and we certainly look forward to additional information. However, if the board does decide to consider the applicant's request, the proposed use of the property must be thoroughly analyzed pursuant to the requirements of the State Environmental Quality Review Act, the law that was enacted by the New York State Legislature to ensure that all agencies conduct their affairs with an awareness that they are the stewards of air, water, land, and living resources, and that they have an obligation to protect the environment for the use and enjoyment of this and future generations, end quote. To the best of our knowledge, to date, the town of Clarkstown has not been provided with any secret documentation in connection with the application or the proposed change to the town of Ramapo's comprehensive plan. The town of Clarkstown has requested these and other documents pursuant to the Freedom of Information law. And again, I want to thank your town attorney because I know in his discussions with Amy Mealy, our town attorney, he did say that he would be glad to provide any documentation that we need to do our independent review. And we do appreciate Ramapo that has agreed to make these documents available for our planning board, our planning department, and our staff. Finally, we believe that the approval of this application will have a significant and adverse effect on our environmental and our traffic patterns, particularly with respect to the traffic and drainage. I know that your traffic engineer has talked a little bit about some information tonight that we were not aware of, and again, I would ask that perhaps that information, because we are indeed very concerned about the traffic patterns, the local roads, what that could mean to the town of Clarkstown, if there would be an opportunity for us to have some clarification on exactly how the plan is laid out and how those traffic patterns would impact our Clarkstown residents. And should Ramapo be inclined to consider the application favorably, we certainly urge that the action be deemed a Type 1 action under seeker and that the environmental impact statement be prepared so that any adverse impacts will be mitigated to the fullest extent possible. So that is a statement jointly by Mr. Holman, myself, Councilwoman Lasker, Hausner, and Borelli, our planning department. But more importantly, again, we are heartened by the fact that there is no action being taken tonight by the town of Ramapo, and we certainly want to thank you for having an open dialogue as we move forward. We think there's some important information that is forthcoming, and we certainly would like the opportunity to have that made available to us so that we can work in a cooperative measure that is both positive for the town of Ramapo and the town of Clarkstown. And lastly, as I said, it is highly unusual. I know when other elected officials come to other towns and oppose or raise questions. I just want you to know that we do appreciate the courtesies that you have afforded us, and certainly that should we in Clarkston ever do anything that has of a concern to Ramapo, you should know that our town board and our planning board would certainly be glad to have you come and explain those concerns, and we would certainly be very respectful as you have been to us tonight.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Richard Rapp? Yeah. Are you ready? Oh, I'm sorry.
Rich Carp, I live in the Squires
I do know
Gate
you.
development
Sure.
in the village of Suffering. I'm here to talk to the town about flood
In Squires Gate
In Squires Gate.
Then you have to wait until we'll have a public participation portion, and we'll
Okay,
discuss that.
sorry.
All right? That's fine. We're glad you're here. Okay, the next one is... Mr. Burgess? Joseph Burgess.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Joseph Burgess. I'm the principal of the firm Burgess, Burgess Associates. We're planners in New Jersey, representing many municipalities in New Jersey, as well as in New York State. I know you've heard from my associate and my wife last week,
Yes,
or
we
last
did.
meeting. I was heartened to hear that there's a revised comprehensive amendment plan that was prepared just, I guess, this week, because we'd like to take a look at that, because in looking at the previous document that had been prepared, it raised a number of questions. One of the things typically we do in comprehensive planning analysis is assess the overall impacts on the community, particularly concerned about population impacts, school impacts, infrastructure impacts, and the like. And we found that the comprehensive plan really lacked that information. We also felt it lacked a lot of information regarding the criteria for placement of multifamily housing in the community. The comprehensive plan from 2004 does in fact identify 7 or 8 very specific criteria that one is supposed to utilize to assess whether or not a site is appropriate for multifamily housing. And I was intrigued that Mr. Lang's report had concluded in a rather net opinion fashion that the site met most of the criteria. But when I read the criteria, I found that overwhelmingly the criteria are not in fact being met. For example, it talks about permitting multifamily housing where there is a sufficient size and dimension to accommodate development. But when examining the concept plan that was prepared, we found that fully 24 of the buildings did not meet some of the bulk requirements of the zone in which they're seeking to be located in. So that would suggest that they cannot or do not meet that one criteria. A second criteria talks about frontage on a state or county highway. That is not the case here. So again, that criteria is not being met. The third, in fact, on that issue, the 2004 document is replete with comments emphasizing the need to be located on state or county highway. So it's not just simply mentioned in the section on regarding the list of criteria. The third issue talks about pedestrian access to community shopping and mass transit facilities. The document actually points out that in this particular area, there's a lack of sidewalks to provide access, pedestrian access to community shopping. So again, here's another criteria that is not being met by this property. That is an issue that is commented upon in 2 other sets of criteria, this issue of pedestrian access to community shopping. In addition to that, there's an issue where the criteria specifically talks about a site must have ready access or connectability to existing water and sewer infrastructure. And yet, when you look at the county report, which I'm sure you'll get into later this evening, they make great emphasis on the fact that there is not that kind of connectivity readily available. Finally, the final criteria talks about unencumbered environmental constraints on a piece of property. And yet, when you look at the maps and when you look at the county report, you find that there is a number of issues associated with environmentally sensitive features that are notable. So consequently, out of these 7 criteria, at best we could find one that is affirmed by this application. And when one can, I'm not sure how one can conclude that meeting one of 7 criteria means that you've met the majority of the criteria as stipulated in the report. And I guess that's a long way of saying my first question to the planner is how did he make that conclusion? So maybe he
Thank
can
you.
answer that?
No, this is not an answer, a debate. This is a public hearing. This is where we hear from the public.
Okay, may I have a few more moments then to finish my thoughts?
Sure, go right ahead.
Thank you. There was a lot of comment about the 105 duplexes. It was unclear the size of the units themselves. In one instance, there was a reference to 1,200 square feet, but I'm not certain if that referred to the 2-bedroom unit or one floor of a 2-bedroom
That
unit.
was clearly the 2-bedroom on the first floor.
Okay. And then the question, it begs the question, what's the size of the upper unit? And I think that needs to be answered. But more importantly than that, is there a definitive bedroom distribution count for that 3/4-bedroom unit? Because in terms of impacts, obviously if you have a 3-bedroom unit, there's a certain level of impact. But if there's a 4-bedroom unit, there's another level of impact. And there's no indication that, at least in a theoretical sense, all of the upper floor units, all 105, could in fact be 4-bedroom units. That obviously has an impact on a variety of infrastructure and community facilities issues. There was a reference by Mr. Ziegler, I believe, and he had indicated that they're going to amend this plan to indicate that all variances will be removed from the plan. However, in examining this plan, it would appear that the only way to do that, at least in this kind of a configuration, would be a reduction in unit count. And I would like to know if that reduction in unit, to what extent would that reduction in unit count be? And if not, will we be seeing a new plan to confirm that, in fact, any adjustment will not result in the need for variance relief? The final question relates to parking. On the current plan, they are short on parking. They show, I believe it's 290 parking spaces plus an additional 60-some of future parking. But in examining the plan, there is no indication of where these future parking spaces are. We counted up the spaces in our office. We find 290 parking spaces, no more, no less. So it's questionable where these future parking spaces are, if they do in fact exist. They clearly do not show on the plan. And that's a critical issue because while we're dealing with 210 units and 290 parking spaces, the code theoretically would require the applicant to provide in excess of 400 parking spaces. That's a significant shortfall that could have a spillover effect to the surrounding community. And I think that also needs to be commented upon at a future meeting. Finally, I just want, I'm not certain if someone from the county is here or not. They had raised a number of significant issues about the goals and objectives set forth in the comprehensive plan. And I think each and every one of those, because I don't want to steal their thunder, but each and every one of those goals and objectives needs to be commented upon, because in each and every one of those instances, whereas your comprehensive plan identifies goals and objectives, They are not being furthered by this application, and in fact, in many instances, they are in fact being degraded, and consequently, I think answers to the questions raised in the county letter need to be addressed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Arlene Yalcott? Or Arlen, I'm sorry.
My name is Alvin Yalcott. I live on Springbrook Road, actually 12 Springbrook Road, which is the entrance to Springbrook Road. And my wife and I have lived there for 41 years. I am one of the people who has actually walked through that property when it was just plain woods, and it's an accurate depiction of that. I haven't been there in maybe 15 years because I don't walk quite as well as I used to. But the fact is, the part that's woods was fine. The part that used to be, I think it was called the Circle Pool, is in total disrepair. There is a pathway in there, and there's also, there could be access either through Ewing or down the Pascack Road as a means of access into the property itself. Now, we've just heard that apparently they no longer intend to use Springbrook Road as an access into the project. If that's correct, you've solved one of the problems. However, my concern is I assume that there'll be a lag time between the start of the project, if it's approved, and the time that it can be completed, usually taking somewhere between a year or 2 years. And the question is, how will the project be constructed if it is in fact approved? If they intend to use Springbrook Road as the access road to bring construction equipment in, that is totally unacceptable to the people who live on Springbrook Road, which is a narrow road as is. There is parking on one side, no parking on the other side, but again, we're talking about a road which is only 29.5 feet wide. So bringing in big construction vehicles, aside from the noise and the inconvenience to the people there, would also probably destroy the present road surface as it exists in the Clarkstown side. In addition to that, although our children are long gone and in other climes, there are quite a number of children who live on that particular street, and quite a number of them play on that street. And I don't know what hours of the time they would, if in fact there's any intention to use that for construction purposes, that would be completely disruptive to these children who are there, and they have a right to enjoy what it is that their parents bought, because what we bought was a no-outlet street. Everybody, including me, way back when, we knew it was going to be a no-outlet street. It was designed that way. And people have moved in. We've had 2 additional generations who have moved in, and I believe everybody who moved in believed that that's what it was going to be. So if it's to be approved at all, if there's an understanding that it will not be used except for emergency circumstances, and there would be a gate, that's another story. But if it's intended to be used for construction purposes or as an access way into a new development in another town, that would not in any way be acceptable to the people who live there, who invested their money, their time, and their effort with the expectation that they would receive what it is that they have now. Now, in terms of the zoning, the area that was originally called Forest Brook Estates was also called Hillcroft, and the original zoning there was R15. Now, if you go through the area, you'll see that it doesn't appear to be R15 because we have cluster housing there. However, a substantial portion of the area that was there was dedicated to the town, so we have little park areas and things which haven't been fully developed and which cannot be built on. And in fact, it really maintains the R15, except it was clustered together, and you have semi-attached houses, which are single-family units, which happen to have a common wall, and then you have a whole series of true single-family houses, which are essentially high ranches. I'm not aware of they're talking about these other areas which have which are more densely populated. They're not in that particular area. They're certainly not on the other side of Pascack Road where Olin is. Those places, they all appear to be R15, and they're all single-family houses, with the exception of one particular area that was developed about 20-some-odd years ago. But other than that, everything in that area was in the R15 range. In addition, the continuation of Pascack Road going straight on Northbrook Road is also single-family houses and have been ever since I've been here and before that. If they're talking about development in Spring Valley, that's exactly what the problem is. The development in Spring Valley is multifamily. It is far denser than what we're accustomed to where we are. I don't know whether or not the prospective owners or tenants in the new project would be in the school district. It is the East Ramapo School District either way, even though we're in Clarkstown. I don't know how that will affect that district, but that's something which should be considered as well. And it is, as you know, a very troubled district for a lot of reasons. As I say, I would look forward to see what the actual revised plan would be, because as it was presented to us now, it would appear to be almost as if it's halved in size, although I don't know if that's really correct. Obviously, if we expected 210 units, all of which had 4 to 6 bedrooms, that's twice the size of what they're talking about now. And nobody seemed to say that wasn't the case last time, so I don't know what it's going to be like the third time we come back, but it's obviously an improvement if it's half the size, as long as they are not going to use Springbrook Road as an access point to do the construction or for traffic coming in and out, because it's simply impossible to do it. We do not have bus service going down Springbrook Road. Bus service stops at the corner of Springbrook and Forest Brook Road, which happens to be part of my property, because I have the large corner over there, and you have cars all over the place during the hours of 7 and 9. So, as I said, I don't know what it is that the traffic engineer thought he saw, but that's there all the time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Yaki. Nancy Restuccia. Am I saying that the right way? Yes, close enough. Thank you.
Hi, my name is
Hi.
Nancy Restuccia. I live in Nanuet, and I will be brief. There's a saying that says statistics, more statistics than lies, and I believe that you can get a report to say anything that you want it to say. So I hold very little credence with these reports that are done. And everybody is concerned about the impact on this, the impact on that, but nobody's saying anything about the impact on our home values. Because where the Hasidim move, home values tend to go down.
Well, this is a project on a land use. This is not something that is designated. Under federal laws, when this is built, anybody will be able to buy this. As a matter of fact, I think they have 18 units that are designated as affordable units as well. So,
Right. Yeah, I believe that too.
well,
Yeah. And you could see everybody here agrees with me. I am already.
well, I just want
Yeah.
you to know that there's a federal law, and these units by law will have to be open to anyone. So I just didn't want you to
No, I understand that can be
Okay.
open to anyone, but there won't be allowed to be open to anyone because we've seen that happen
No,
elsewhere.
that would be against the federal law. That's what I was trying to explain
Right,
to you.
and there's a way to get around it. There's always a way to get around it. So I am vehemently
Nancy.
opposed, yes, to this development because of personal reasons. My property value has already decreased by $100,000 because of the bank fiasco, and I'm afraid with continued expansion like this, property values in Rockland are just going to continue to go down, and you're not going to be able to live here anymore. So I am being very politically incorrect, but somebody has to say it, and nobody's addressing these types of issues, but yet everybody here feels the same. And I'm sure if I can get 100 other people or 1,000 other people in here from the neighborhood, they would feel the same way.
Thank you,
That's all I
Nancy.
have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
William Ajetti?
Thank you very much, Supervisor.
Good evening. Moi content de
Good
venir parler
evening.
avec nous aujourd'hui.
Thank you very much, and good evening. My name is William. My last name is Ajeti. I live right at the back of the property that they are trying to develop. And I'm wondering still we are discussing this issue, Mr. Supervisor, because most of us who lives in the area have expressed our, inappropriate way of coming to develop the area. I have said from the beginning that this small property helps us in the area. When the wind blows, terrible. When the storm blows, terrible. These are the small portions of land that supports the developments in the area, our houses in the area. This morning, I was standing at the back of my house, Mr. Supervisor, and I saw so many, the whole place is wet, flooded. And I'm wondering why they are not looking forward for another place to go and build this development done to come to our area and destroy our area and go away. And I'm very glad they have done so much research work on the area. I'm so glad. But in the English language, we said it is easier to be said than done. When you have come and you have developed the place and you have gone, you have taken your money, and then we are going to suffer in the area. And that is why we don't want it. And then I don't know if you have noticed, some of the Rockland developments are becoming segregational. I cannot go and rent it. Neither you can go and rent it. And so if these things are coming into our area, it's coming to be very, very uncomfortable to us. And that is one of the important things too, which we have to address. And now, Mr. Supervisor, I want to ask them a question. The representatives here of Lumba, and then those who have brought all their research work. Let us face facts. If it were to be you, and they have to develop this at the back of your house, will you be happy? Tell me this evening. If it's your house, you, and they want to develop this property at the back of your house, will you be happy? No. You'll never be happy.
Okay.
And so, Mr. Supervisor, all we are telling them is that they shouldn't put us into an awkward position where we cannot handle it. With all respect, this evening, we want to tell you once again that we reject the proposed zoning amendments and the comprehensive plan amendments that is before you, before all of us tonight. We reject it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ajetti. Hiram Cologne?
Hello, my name is Hiram Cologne. I live on 29 Albacan Road, which is the next left after you come up Forest Brook Road. The first right is Springbrook, and the next left is my street. And it's also a dead-end street, which I have appreciated for 27 years that I've been there. When I first moved there, the realtor that was working with me told me, this is a transitional neighborhood. Okay, so this is like a starter home for you. Not everyone could look like that at situations like this is a starter home, and that you're going to just go prosper, and then in a few years you're just going to get up and go and get a bigger house. You know, that's nice. Some people could do that, but many people cannot do that. And being that the country took a real terrible fiscal crush since about 2007, 2008, and like somebody else mentioned before, land values were going up, and I was pretty happy. My property was increasing, and then all of a sudden it went the other way, and it stopped, and it started going down. And as people move out, and I personally know at least about 3 families that have moved out, and unfortunately they had to sell at a lower rate, which affects the people that stay behind. Consequently, the land values, the property values go down. I raised my family, my 2 sons there, and I'm raising my granddaughter there right now. I could tell you that I lived a very happy life there since 1987. I know all the kids in the neighborhood, and I've seen generations of kids growing up in the neighborhood. I knew kids all the way from down the hill to some kids from Spring Valley, because I was a baseball coach, and I saw something changing in the last, especially in the school systems, and I know that there has been a transition in Spring Valley of the groups that live there. Also, there were some things that used to bother me. Basically, I was at the back on this side of Clarkstown, and behind me was I think it's 2nd Avenue, which runs straight all the way to Ewing, I think, or close to it. And every once in a while, things would happen on that side of the street. And some things affected, I was afraid sometimes. I heard bullet shots and stuff like that. There was drug dealings going on back there somewhere. There was a whole lot of things. There were sometimes sting operations where police came to me and asked me if they could film and stuff like that. And some of that has cleared up. And I saw, because I would travel through 2nd Avenue and to Spring Valley, in that area, and I saw that they built a lot of large single homes, which was good. And then as you go north, all of a sudden I noticed, as you get toward Ewing Avenue, that they started building larger multi-units. So I wasn't even aware of them. They look pretty nice visually, you know. Nice apartments and all of that. That's the same place, one of those places was the same place where that child was run over in a parking lot. I don't know if you remember that. There was a child playing, and somebody they just got killed in that area right there. I think it was Rose, or Froze, which is near there, if I'm not mistaken. Rose Street, back there. Anyway, the point that I'm trying to make is, I have mixed feelings about this whole thing. You know, I'm Hispanic, I'm Puerto Rican. I was raised in this country, so I wasn't a migrant. I didn't come from anywhere. I came from the Bronx, like many people here, you know. So the word immigrant bothers me sometimes, because it's not immigrant, you know, especially if you're a citizen, and I'm a citizen. I could be a migrant anywhere in this country, but I'm not an immigrant. And I have a lot of feeling for the immigration that's happening in our area too. That's a totally another subject. That's something else. And what I was thinking was, question that I had was, what are the basic motives of the developers? What was the basic motive to do this? You know, what is it? You know, because sometimes, let's say I want to open up a donut shop, or I want to sell donuts. I look to a place where nobody sells donuts, and I'll open it up there, and that'll be fine. There's a need, okay? So I would like to know if that was investigated, was it solicited from the community for somebody to build something there? Or did just somebody from outside come and just say, hey, this is like a good deal. If I could throw some units over here, you know, we could make some loot right here. It might be good. I mean, I'm not negating the fact that we live in a capitalistic world. You know, we live in a capitalistic world, and I understand that. Right now, I'm not planning to go anywhere. I'm raising my granddaughter. She's 11 months. And I would like her to see growing up in the neighborhood. It really bothered me to hear. I was coming last week, not last week, when the other meeting was, but there was a little miscommunication, and I landed up seeing it on television. So I saw the whole meeting. So it bothered. I appreciate those people that stood up and spoke up for the neighborhood, that we want to keep our neighborhood, no matter where we are, if it's our little piece of property, if it's not 2 acres, if it's a part of an acre, it's still our property, and we want to make it nice, and we want to raise our family, we want safety, we want everything to be kept nice, just like the fact that we have dead-end streets is always great. And they've been trying to make a street to Spring Valley. A lot of people, a lot of interest, people with interest have been trying to do that, and we've always knocked it down, and I will continue to try to keep that section not exposed to everything else around us, behind us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Colon. Thank you. I have one more speaker that signed up, and then I'll take people by raising their hand. Robert Romanowski.
It's Robert Romanowski, 183 Maple Avenue, Monsey. Really 2 things I want to talk about here today. The first thing is, does Ramapo really have a comprehensive plan? I know in 2004 you did one. You have one on paper. And the comprehensive plan in 2004, when you came out with it, Supervisor St. Lawrence, you said that it was the best comprehensive plan for Ramapo because it kept the most highest density housing in Monsey where it was needed the most and became less dense as you moved toward the outer fringes of the town. And that's what you said that, but a few years after that, there was a down zone by this board of the Patrick Farm, and that's on the outer fringes of the town. So it leads me to wonder, if the town really does have a master plan. I know you have one on paper, but you seem to change it whenever you want, and don't keep your word on what you said the master plan was going to be about. Also, with your master plan, this area that we're discussing today, your master plan of 2004 said that this area should remain as a single-family area. The other question I have is with these units, there's a duplex unit on top with an apartment below. Is that an accessory apartment? Because in Ramapo we have accessory apartments. So I want to know, is an accessory apartment allowed in an MR12 zone? What you seem to have is a unit above with an 2-bedroom accessory apartment below. And I also want to know, how is this going to work? Is this rental unit going to be owned by the people who live above it? Or is it going to have a different owner who's just going to rent it out? How is this going to work with this accessory apartment? So what we may have here is 105 units, each with an accessory apartment. So I'd like some more clarification on that. The last thing I want to speak about, you offered doing a lot of studies here, and the planners have done a lot of studies. And I'm requesting that, you said that this is open to everyone, this housing is available to everyone, so everyone that lives there is going to need an education, and this is in the East Ramapo School District. And I want to know if there's any kind of study going to be done to determine how this project will have an effect on the East Ramapo School District. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Romanowski. Okay, anybody else want to speak? Michael, come right up.
Mike Perry, 86 Buckark Road. And I'm speaking in opposition to the housing discrimination that is inherent in this project. And I spoke about this last time, but I have to say, you know, I've seen you pull a lot of shenanigans, Mr. Supervisor, but for you to sit there and say with a straight face that there's a federal law that we have to follow, and we're going to make sure that these housing units are going to be, they're not going to be segregated from a community, is a new low for you. Because you know that those federal housing laws and requirements are routinely, systematically, and comprehensively ignored in Ramapo. All right? You are the president of the RLDC. Okay? And the RLDC constructed the Elm Street project. Okay? And it was, I don't know exactly what the situation was, but there was some federal funding and state funding or government funding involved in that project. And you know as well as I do that when you go to the Elm Street project, there is not a single member, aside from the ultra-Orthodox community, living in that entire housing complex, bar none. I'm not talking, there's no exceptions to that. It is entirely segregated, and it's housing that you built, and for you to sit here and say, oh, we're going to have to follow the federal housing law, when you know that that's false. You know that when you said that to that lady, that you were lying. Okay, that was a lie, and you know it. Okay, and you know you're well known for lying when you need to, but this and the Elm Street project is one example. You know the Parkview Apartments, same exact thing. You got a piece of prime real estate in downtown Spring Valley. Okay, the people in Spring Valley need 1- and 2-bedroom apartments. There were no apartments in that complex that were designed for the people of color or the people of Spring Valley aside from the ultra-Orthodox community. You go to the Parkview Apartments, and once again, there's not a single person living in that complex that's not from the ultra-Orthodox community. And there are many other examples. Ridge Avenue and almost all of the new construction that goes up is segregated housing, okay? You could easily, with this project, Chris, the town has the power to easily say to the developer, okay, you want to have some high density, 4- to 6-bedroom apartments, well, you're going to have some 1- and 2-bedroom apartments. You could easily make that happen. But of course, we know that that will never happen in Ramapo. So what we have here is housing discrimination. It's a federal issue. And essentially, it's ethnic cleansing because you're trying to fast-track all of the developments that will be appeal to the ultra-Orthodox community and prevent any housing that would cater to the needs of the larger community that need 1- and 2-bedroom apartments.
Thank you. Yes.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Natalie Patasaw, and I live in Ramapo. And I don't live near this. I live in Wesley Hills. However, I was reviewing the, and I'm not here representing any organization, even though I'm on the planning board for the Rockland County. I'm on the Water Task Force for Rockland County. I chair the Environmental Management Council as a advisory group to the Rockland County Legislature. But I'm here because I also teach environmental science. And I was looking at the recommendations by the, it's a public document, by the planning board. And some of the things there concerned me. There was I believe it was this gentleman, an architect, a planner, engineer, okay. And he mentioned so many different things that were vitally important to a neighborhood. In planning, we call that a sense of place. And we understand what that sense of place is. That means when you go to Baltimore and you see all those row houses with the white marble stairs, you know you're in Baltimore. When you go to some certain other kinds of communities, there is a feel and a look that this has. And apparently, because this is so out of character with the existing land use patterns, it would destroy that sense of place for the area. And that's not what people, that's not what people moved here from. I also moved here from New York City. Probably like, show of hands, anybody ever lived in New York City? Okay. New York City is extremely high density. One of the reasons we moved here is to breathe some fresh air and have a little space. But one of the other things that concerns me is, but looking at this document, there's what we call steep slope development, that it would impact steep slopes. And when you develop on an incline, what you do is, of course, you take away the vegetation. One of the natural services of vegetation is you have a root system. The root system keeps your topsoil in place so that when it rains, you don't have a mudslide. All right? And that mudslide would come down. It impacts your sewers, your drainage. These are kinds of things a lot of people are not concerned about until it happens. So that's one of the issues. But it also says that there are wetlands on the area. They call them Environmental Protection Agency environmentally sensitive areas. Those basically are wetlands. And the reason I bring that up is because, as you well know, there was and I'm sure all of you know, that for many years, the United Water Company wanted to have a desalination plant in Haverstraw Bay. Now, what that means is that they wanted to take water out of the Hudson River and put it through a desalination process, which is a filtering process, and sell it to us to drink. I'll tell you something. I was in one of my classes, and I was explaining this to the students, and one of the students, teenagers, they said, "You mean we can't eat fish out of that river? And they're going to sell us the water?" Okay, but you know something? Technically, desalination is used around the world, but not in water-rich areas. We're in a water-rich area. Why do I bring that up? Because if you build what they call impervious surfaces, cement, driveways, streets on environmentally sensitive land, in other words, you build over your wetlands, the rainwater that we get won't go back into the ground and recharge the aquifers. We only have rainwater and snow, and people say, "Oh my gosh, what a terrible day, it's snowing." I'm like, hey, if it snows now, we won't have a drought in August. So we should be very happy it's raining and snowing, all right? But that's something that we need to be very much aware of, that, and this is one of the things that the legislature has developed, not developed, it's not the right word, has organized a task force on water management for Rockland County, because we do need to manage the water. One of the issues with managing the water, as you well know, is how do we distribute the housing? What do we pave over? And this has nothing to do with, I know some people are in this, you against us, us against you, this, that's not what it is, because we all need to have adequate water supplies. I don't care what you look like. You can be pink with purple polka dots. You still need to drink, well, maybe you wouldn't need it then. But you understand my point. Black, white, pink, or purple, you still need to have water, right? And that's what I'm concerned about, that we don't destroy our water resources or the ability of nature to replenish our natural water supplies. Because what are we going to do without water? You know, we take it for granted. So that's another thing that was very much of concern. Now, this another piece of this is that it says it's a fourfold increase in the number of people that are currently allowed to live in that area per the zoning regulations. Can you imagine if we were in this room and we increased the number of people in here 4 times? You know, it gets very crowded. The character of the place is not the same. The resources are not the same. The amount of garbage that would be generated is not the same. A fourfold increase in the population, that's a 400% increase, you know, and we really need to be concerned about what are the impacts with not just, in addition to the traffic and the roadways, the sewer systems, the water drainage. There are many different things that we just take for granted because our great civil servants that care for this or the contracted agencies, we do this as a matter of course. 400% increase in the garbage that is generated in a particularly small area, that's something we need to be concerned about. So those are just a couple of the things. We've had a great many very good citizens speaking here tonight. I respect all of you for, you know, your thoughts and your issues, and I just wanted to add a few concerns that I think we need to consider very, very seriously before this is approved. I really appreciate the fact that you've allowed me to speak, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Nadler.
Good evening. My name is Marcia Greenberg. I'm a resident of Ruston Estates, which is in the Clarkstown section of this property. The gentleman from your planning board, or your town planner, did show a very beautiful...
What's your address there, please?
7 Ruston Lane.
Thank you.
I've been a resident there since 1979. And just to briefly jump offside, Ruston Lane, or Ruston Estates, is an RG2 property in this community. We are 25 homes on 5.5 acres. I don't think that's high density. And that is one of the areas that was shown on your exhibits. Your town planner showed a beautiful exhibit of the area showing a house that has a community that has high density. I believe that house was either previously bungalow colony or that has been transferred to an all-year season house, or it was a single-family home that has now multi-units. That is the one and only house or development of that nature in that community. As everybody else has pointed out, we have R15, we have many single-family homes. This change to a high-density community will really disrupt the nature of the community and the way it looks. I do have several questions about what we are seeing here tonight. I know there's been change from the last meeting. As somebody's pointed out, with the number of units are now half, but it's going to have an egress onto Pascack Road. I'd like to know where that is going to go on Pascack Road. Pascack Road has several sides to it, and how this is going to affect, even though we're saying the traffic pattern does not change, well, maybe from 7 to 9, but most of our people in the community commute into New York City. They are gone by 7 o'clock. They're on a train at 10 to 7, or my husband at 10 after 6. So your traffic patterns at that time mean absolutely nothing. Coming home from the train station at night, he has to wait at least 4 to 5 traffic lights to get through the one-lane tunnel.
Thank you, Marcia.
At this time of the year, with the development of the Spring Valley,
Go ahead, Marcia.
now, I like to be paid attention
Yeah,
to. I really resent when I'm
You
talking.
asked a question and he wanted it answered. Go ahead.
At this time of the year, the traffic on Pascack Road, with everybody going to, thank goodness, the well-developed Spring Valley Marketplace, is impossible. We have to make a left turn out of our development onto Pascack Road. If we don't do it at night, we are bound to be hit by an oncoming car. We are on a curve, as that whole road is more of a rural road, even though it's a county road, with no sidewalks except for one side of the street, partial way between Forest Brook and Smith Road. There is no place to walk. It is impossible to travel on that road. So your highway traffic studies can show everything, but they're not real. I have questions about, you say federal housing. Does that 18 units going to be Section 8 housing? And if they're low income, who is going to set the criteria to the rentals? Also, if we have 2 types of ownership or living in that housing, is it going to be a homeowners association? Who's going to maintain that property so that our properties maintain their value in this community? Does the proposed development going to be on both those lots that are going in for zone change, or is this on one lot only now that the property has been cut down in half? Is the second property that's adjacent to it now going to be developed too? Or is this 105 acres are on both those lots that are requesting zone changes? I really hope by the time we come to the next meeting that these questions will be answered.
Thank you, Marcia.
Good evening. Beatrice Burgess with Burgess Associates. You heard earlier from my husband, who stole my thunder a bit, but that means that you'll be happy to hear that it'll keep me shorter. I want to thank the board for having this hearing and for scheduling the next one and presumably another one to address all of the issues that have arisen not only from the board but also the citizens and the county. I understand that you're not taking or you're not giving answers to questions. Some of my questions from last hearing were answered, but many remain, so I will ask them again, and I have a few to add. I was curious as to what the water capacity, what water capacity was needed for this project. That has not been addressed. I was also concerned and curious about what the sewer capacity would be needed for this project, and what is the quality of the system currently, and can it accommodate the flow of this development? I know it's been talked about and discussed, but none of the experts addressed the location of the floodplains or the locations of the wetlands and how the developments would be accommodated around those environmental constraints. The county letter from the Planning Board of Rockland County greatly stressed the issue of easements around those environmental constraints. It noted that currently, on the current plan, there are buildings set to be built on easements, and that is not permissible.
Beatrice, you were here when Mr. Jackson spoke.
Yes.
He clearly said that there were wetlands on the property that were not going to be built upon, and there's a floodplain there that's not going to be built upon.
I did not hear how large the easements would be.
Okay. All right, I'll make a note of that.
And that was specifically mentioned by the county. Now, again, I know that the square footage of the 2-bedroom apartment or unit was 1,200 square feet. we have not heard what the total square footage would be, or at least I did not hear it. I asked some people, they didn't hear it either. And also there was some confusion as to whether each of these duplexes would be owned by one individual and then the two-bedroom unit would be rented out. Could I get any clarification on that? Did I just...
I made a note of what you just asked.
So I
And
can't get any clarification?
We'll make sure that we get an answer for you on it.
Okay. I mean, I would just like to note that Mr. Carbon was quoted in the paper saying that he will answer all questions from the neighbors on November 21st, so perhaps you could do that and just speak to the units? Why?
Because last time you were here, you said you'd never been to Ramapo before, so we'd happy to answer your question.
Okay.
Neighbor.
Can I get an answer to my question?
Beatrice, this is the chance for you to speak. I'm making notes on every question that you ask. And this is not... Please, sir, we're not going to have you swear in here. You're going to have to leave the room. All right, please, just don't do it again, okay?
I was just quoting what Mr. Carbon said in a newspaper.
Beatrice,
so I was hoping
Beatrice,
that he could just...
Beatrice.
You know, had he answered how
Beatrice,
many units there were
Mrs.
last
Burgess?
time... Yes, now I will respond.
Okay, Ms. Burgess. You did this last time. We made it very clear to you. You can ask any questions. We'll get answers for this. That's why we are extending these public hearings, so we can get answers. And so this is not a time to be quizzing anyone. You make your points that you want to make and what you want to have answered, and we will make notes of it.
Okay,
That's the way it works.
Let me digress a moment. The attorney, Mr. Ryan Carbon, started out by saying that there had been a lot of rumors about 6-bedroom units. Had he simply answered my question last time as to how many units there were in this project, there wouldn't have been these quote-unquote rampant rumors. So I don't think it's unfair to ask what the square footage is. That's it. It's a simple question. This is a public hearing. The public deserves to know. The public's coming out on a rainy, stormy, snowy night. I mean, I would expect the board to be a little kinder to its constituents. I am making my point.
Make your points.
I am making
It's
my
1,200 on the
point.
first floor. My guess would be 2,400 if there's
That
two
is a
other floors.
guess. Is that what we're putting on the record? Is that what the judge will read?
No, what I'm saying to you is that it will be in all the documents.
Well, in the document from your town planner, you did have, or he did write 6 units. 6 bedrooms in the unit. 6-bedroom units is in your planner's report. 6-bedroom units. So which is it?
Mr. Lang.
So are you picking
Mr.
and choosing what I can get a response to?
No, because I'm not going to have you, give out information that's
Oh, I can quote
misinformation.
you.
So, Mr. Lang, would you directly answer that? Because she's said that you're...
Let me use the microphone.
Oh, sure. Go right ahead.
In order to be conservative, we took the maximum development that we thought could go for the environmental assessment. What that means is that the actual development will probably be less. And now you've heard it is less. What we have covered in the environmental review is that we have the capacity at the worst case. Is this going to be the worst case? No. That's where the 4 to 6 bedrooms came from. The actual development now, as presented, is 2 and 4 bedroom.
Thank you for your reply. I would like to know if there's anything if this were to be approved, this 2-bedroom and 4-bedroom distribution within the duplexes, will this be part of the stipulation of the approval? Or is this something that will just be said will happen, but we won't really know how many bedrooms are in there until the COs are issued, certificates of occupancy? Yes. Someone had brought this up, which was a key point that I wanted to address as well. There has been no mention thus far of school impacts, right? So if you just bear with me for 1 second, here it is. I was very happy to hear, Mr. Supervisor, that this housing will be open to everyone. So therefore, we need to hear about the impacts that these units and the children that come from these units will have on the school system. Now, I may not live here, but I read the papers, and I know that East Ramapo School District has been in the news nationally for the stresses that it has been under. So therefore, if we have, going on your estimates, there are 105 four-bedroom units, that's 420 bedrooms, 105 two-bedroom units, that's 210 bedrooms, that's 630 total bedrooms. You subtract 1 bedroom per couple or per adult, presumably they will be alone in that. Okay, that's 210 bedrooms that you're subtracting. You are left with 420 bedrooms. Let's be conservative and say that only 1 child will go into each bedroom, although we all know, anybody who's had a sibling, many times you have to share a room, right? Okay, so if you have 420 kids, and you take an education cost, which at a minimum, the average in the tri-state area, is about $7,500 per kid, your budget is going to take a hit of over $3 million just for schools. All right, just for schools. And these kids clearly are going to live there. These are big units. This does not take into consideration as well the costs for the community facilities and for recreation. Again, I was not clear whether, and the lady who spoke before me addressed this. I am not clear, and I guess I can't get this simple answer either, whether this is for the entire property, are these the 2 properties, are these all the units, are we going to hear about the other property at another time? This is a process where we just don't know what we're talking about here. Nobody's clarifying what we need to know. But again, I would like to point out, because I did the calculation today in our office that my husband mentioned, you know, it says in the map that I have, and I am using the map for the record, the Pascack Ridge zone change, that shows apparently just the Monsey development, Monsey lumber development, that it says that there are 210 units with 2 parking spaces per unit, 420. Provided parking spaces are 290, and reserved parking spaces are 68. Now it says each region, each neighborhood, how many spaces are in each one. As the woman said, you know, you could put anything in a report, so I counted each spot individually. And I will say that there are a total of, what did I just say? A total of 290, but the 68 in reserve, not to be found. And I would point out that they're still woefully deficient on parking. One moment. I would like to know who is going to address the county's letter and how it will be addressed. There are over 25 concerns stated in that letter. And my last question, again, is, could something be built on this site that conforms with the zoning as it stands currently? Thank you for your time. I will be back.
Thank you, Ms. Burgess.
My name is Deborah Munitz. I live at 5 Rose Hill Road in Montebello. Thanks for having me. John, the new plans do look better. However, if only you were actually doing some of the other projects in the area. Okay. Sorry I got here late. I may be covering some ground that was already addressed.
Go right ahead.
And I just want to say thank you for, I heard from other people that you're going to be doing another public hearing in January, which addresses a lot of my preliminary concerns about how there's just a lot of documents coming in. I know John Lang's latest document just came in on Monday, and I just got it yesterday, and it's pretty comprehensive, even though it's still a little incomplete. One of the things I did not see yet, which I was concerned about, was a review by the drainage agency. I had spoken to Vincent Altieri, because I'm on the water task force, as well, and he had said he hadn't seen it in his office. So I do believe that it's important to make sure it gets referred to the drainage agency, especially with all the floodplains, the steep slopes, the brooks, and the wetlands. I think that's important. I also didn't see any feedback from Spring Valley. I'm just was wondering if it had gotten referred to them, and whether you guys were expecting feedback from that neighboring municipality.
The deputy mayor of Spring Valley has been here all evening.
Okay,
It
but
was
you haven't
referred
gotten
to
a
later.
document.
It was referred to both the drainage agency and the Village of Spring Valley.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so we're expecting that we should get, theoretically, something back. I saw John had told me that there was a JD for the property. I did see Stacy Jensen's letter with the ACO's cover form, but none of the maps or anything that it was based on. I also haven't seen in the plans any sort of existing conditions that would include like all the wetlands, all the easements, the sewer easements, the utility easements, something that indicates the steep slopes, where the current tree coverage is. It would be really helpful. ATSL they're great. They may actually have already done this, but I didn't see it as part of the record. I really believe that should be part of the record, to have like one place where we could really see what's going on there, and so that the impact can be judged. I wanted to ask I'm a little confused as to the seeker process that's being followed, and maybe Attorney Klein can address this, where in the process we are. I didn't see any scoping documents. I didn't see any documents saying that, the wording of John Lang's document sort of speaks to a lot of environmental impact studies being done, but it doesn't appear to be in the format that I would have been expecting, or I didn't see, maybe I didn't find the resolutions related to that. So I was hoping that maybe at the end of this hearing, before you announce the public hearing, maybe you could at least just let the public know where we are in the process.
I know you didn't get the first part of the meeting, Deb, but Mr. Lang did go over the entire supplemental EAS and went through, point by point.
But are we in that official process at this point? Was there like a scoping for the EIS?
There's no scoping. There was
Okay.
a EAF Part 1 submitted with both petitions.
Okay.
The town is
saw that.
required to prepare an EAF Part 2, identifying those areas of environmental concern which we want the applicants to come back and explain in greater detail.
Was that
And
done? No, I'm just asking if that was done already.
Yeah, he did it. He presented it
He
to us.
presented, okay,
Yeah.
because I didn't get it yesterday.
We'll get
Go
you a
ahead,
copy.
go ahead.
Thank you.
Okay.
And Mr. Lang had a large visual of the EAF Part 2 for both projects that he reviewed with the board and those here. And the board later may either adopt that Part 2 or adjourn consideration of that to a later meeting. That has
Okay.
yet to be decided by the board.
Okay.
And then, assuming that Part 2 is adopted, then it's incumbent on the applicants to respond to that and submit a Part 3.
Okay, and did you guys, I assume you declared yourself lead agency at some point? Was that done?
We are the lead agency on this, yes.
Was it, was that for, I haven't seen a I'm just looking through I'm making sure my record is complete.
This is the.
It's okay, go ahead.
This
You
is the
can-
sole
you can educate
approval
me.
entity for the applications that are before the board. So the town board is the only entity that has the approval authority for the zone change, which is proposed, and for an amendment to the comprehensive plan. There's
Okay.
no other agency that could approve that.
So you're saying it's assumptive? It's like it's an assumed thing?
There's no dispute among different municipal agencies because we're the sole agency that has jurisdiction to make these determinations.
Okay, so you're saying it's not necessary, not declared because it's not necessary. Okay, got it. And then, so you answered my question about the EAF Part 2. And is there a list, because like you were saying, certain things had gotten referred, is there actually a list of all of the agencies that you're expecting to review this? Like a list of involved agencies? That wasn't in the document that I saw. Is there like sort of a list that you're tracking?
There's a list of every agency that received a referral from the town board. Yes, we can provide that to you.
So there's a list that can be provided. Okay. So coming back to the comment that I made the last public hearing, was my concern that this is an amendment to the comprehensive plan which affects all of the town of Ramapo. meaning it's supposed to be comprehensively reviewed in the context of its impact, benefits, detriments to everyone in the town of Ramapo. And it should be comprehensively evaluated in that context. I happen to think John seems to be tracking and trying to pull together all the documents with respect to this specific property. But I didn't see anything so far related to any analysis overall relative to the 2004 comprehensive plan. Like, where are we in the plan? What has been developed under the plan? Where was the plan seen to be, insufficient? We're talking about changing this one small portion of this medium density development area, and it's actually a pretty large area on the map. And I don't see, other than the fact that this happens to be undeveloped at this time, which makes it unique, there's nothing else that I see that differentiates it from the rest of the area. So why would they not be entitled to a change in zoning? Because there's that entire area, north, a little bit east, mostly north of it, that, what is to stop this process from rolling over? Why is this different? How is this being contemplated in a way that, when the next developer comes and says, I want to buy these 3 homes and do this. We've had areas in Ramapo where developers has come in and they've bought up, 3 single-family homes and they've replaced it with, 60 apartments. What's to stop the process and the consideration if we don't do a better job with how we consider this plan? Because we're setting a precedent for how we handle future, zoning requests. And I said last time that I really felt that I agreed that, thank you, the time had come, that it, has been a decade, and I agree that, there are needs that need to be addressed, and that we have to go back and sort of evaluate this overall inventory and the needs of, you've got needs of people who want to stay low density, you've got the needs of people who need more, development, and you've got all sorts of different constraints, but it should be a town-wide evaluation. I don't think that you can consider, I know you're going through a lot of effort to deal with this comprehensively, but I think until you actually deal with it comprehensively as a town of Ramapo at large, I think we're just, and I don't want to mean this meanly, but this is still spot zoning. I think that John's trying to do a very good job to try and address this, but it is still spot zoning because you've got the largest percentage of the property by 2 developers who are asking for consideration. And if you give them consideration, what's to stop other developers from coming along? I think we're setting a really bad precedent, and it's just not an appropriate way to do it, especially when we're at a time where we had the desal plan that's been put on hold. Thank you very much for fighting so hard to do that. I really want to give the supervisor credit for being part of that fight. But now we're at this situation where we have limited water resources, and the county is pulling together a big task force to evaluate, how we're going to maximize our waters, redirect them, clean them up, do all this, and we're talking about developing a property that has steep slopes, it's next to a brook, it has wetlands, it has utilities, it has all of these reasons that it probably hasn't been developed to date. And there was good reasons for you, sorry, in the original comprehensive plan, and I didn't see any, I may have missed it, but there actually was a recommendation in the plan for the property, that green mark on the land use plan that was associated with the comprehensive plan, was actually a recommendation to buy that space for open space. And I think that was in recognition of the fact that, this is an area that could use a little extra protection. So I think we need to have, what is the status of all the multifamily development that's underway? What about older, rundown, empty apartment buildings? Why aren't they being renovated or replaced first? How does this help the residents in all the villages who want less density and not more density? How does it help us? How does this actually help the residents in the adjacent areas? I think the people in the adjacent areas want to know. I don't think they feel that this is going to help them at all. Who does this actually help? Okay, if it's just a small portion of the town of Ramapo, or if it's actually to take advantage of this pent-up demand from outside the town of Rampo to move into the town of Rampo, then are we making a decision or contemplating making this decision for people who are outside the town of Rampo? Why would we want to hurt our ratables, our current residents, and our desires and all the things that made us invest in this town for the benefit of someone else? Okay, it's a very serious conversation, and you have to analyze that in order to make this a comprehensive plan amendment. What will it? I think someone raised the issue of, the number of residents. I figured easily it's a 1 to 2,000. Where are the costs? Where's the fiscal analysis of what it's going to take to support several thousand new residents? I know I'd looked at this before, and just the garbage collection alone is probably more than the cost of one garbage collector. So where's the economic value to this? Has there been an analysis of the loss of value to homes in the area where so many people are leaving the town of Ramapo because of overdevelopment? I think that this is actually something that we really need to consider, because there are a lot of studies out there that show that real economic drivers are redevelopment, not new development. That jobs and consistent ongoing jobs for people who are in the construction industry, ways in which to drive assessed values for homes is actually done so much more effectively with redevelopment and scarcity of properties and scarcity of resources. And it's not just the 2008 crash that's causing our property values to be suppressed. It's this general, I don't want to call it like white flight, but there is a certain aspect of that going on, and I think it's really important for us to maintain all of the different areas within the town, and I think we have to think about this in the bigger context of what's going on. So I asked for the map. The traffic study doesn't mention the Pascack one-way tunnel, which somebody else raised, that's less than a mile south, which is one way, and it's a big problem. The traffic study is, again, based upon incorrect underlying assumptions about the size of the population in the units. This was something that we raised in a previous development discussion. And it's really important to make sure that the underlying assumptions for all of these various expert studies are actually related to the kinds of population densities and implementations that we have here in Ramapo. I saw in John Lang's document that building distances are going to be about 25 feet apart. Probably not sufficient. If the buildings are going to be 3 stories high, then you're going to need building spaces more like 36 feet apart. There's always the concern, if you start having taller multifamily dwellings, of the need and the impacts on the fire department and the access roads. And it really changes the way things look. Maybe one of the things that needs to be considered is a new MR12 with building height limitation, because when you look at some of the smaller, we have here, you've got Stonegate communities that are multifamily, you've got, the Knolls and things like that. And one of the things that really makes them blend into the surroundings a lot better and make it a lot easier to sort of mix them with the surrounding area is the fact that all of the roofs are just smaller. The overall volume of the homes are smaller. And while we're looking at all of these documents that show a lot of footprints, we're not really looking at visual impacts, which should be part of an environmental assessment. And fire safety impacts, other than, this being, let's see, what makes this zone better? Okay, so I had asked the question about what makes this different than other spaces in the area, what happened to the open zone space recommendation. I'm wondering who's collecting the minutes. When will the minutes of the last public hearing and this public hearing be available for review? Who's compiling a list of the questions asked? Who will be replying to the list of questions? Will it be John? Will it be Leonard Jackson? Will it be, will we have adequate time to review the answers that are presented? When you do fill the file out, like I already asked, could you please pull in all of the maps and such, which were the basis for the preliminary JD? It's my understanding that in 2015, I was told by an environmental attorney, that ACO is actually planning to expand their protection of wetlands to include a 50-foot buffer around the wetlands. I'm hoping you're a municipality, maybe you've heard more about this, I can try and get you some more information, but I want to know if that's been taken into consideration. Does that particular review only cover the Monsey lumber part, or does it do Collinshaw, or is it the entire zone area? What about the loss of trees? If I'm extrapolating correctly, you had 28.5 acres, less there was acreage for the utility easement, which I think was about 3.5, so that means about 25 acres or so, which are documented as densely covered acres, are going to be cleared for this, which translates to a net loss of around 5,000 to 6,000 mature trees. I know some people have commented on the buffers that these trees provide. Obviously, if it were to be built out according to the current subdivision that was already approved for Monsey lumber, the expectation would be that there would be small clearings and you'd plop down these single-family homes within those cleared spaces, and there would be less of an impact. So that's an important thing to consider. I requested a copy of this document, John Lang's document, in original PDF format. I did it in my FOIL request, and then I had to follow up with your office. I explained that printing and scanning causes these documents to actually be, less than usable. And I think it's really imperative that the public be delivered the highest quality documents, especially when it's at no cost to the town, to deliver these things in the original PDF format that they were given to you in. Obviously, there are graphics that are included in the document, which presumably exist in larger separate file forms, which probably make for even better viewing. And it would probably be free, for you to actually include those to the public in individual PDF format so that people could actually look at it and not go blind or simply be unable to see it even with a magnifying glass. I said the maps included in the comprehensive plan document don't look like the full maps in the project folders, which is good. I'm happy to see these changes. But what are we actually evaluating? Because things are changing. So we're foiling documents, you're getting answers, people are getting confused. You guys don't want to answer questions in the context of the meeting as to where we are with these plans, what is being concerned. And I think that the point that Ms. Burgess brought up was really important, that it's really important when we consider these things to really think not just about changing the zones, but to really think about what kind of restrictions would be associated with any contemplation. What would keep this within the realm of good planning or sustainability? I talked about the impacts on the water supply and demand. I didn't see any. United Water is going to give you a willingness to serve no matter what. They just do it. They claim that that's their responsibility and they're going to do it no matter what. So I know they're going to do that, but the question is, there's always a caveat, and at this point, nobody really knows what that caveat means. So I think it's really important that we do think about where all the various applications are across the board, across the town of Ramapo, for all the subdivisions, for all the new developments being contemplated within the existing zoning before we start considering this one. And I made the comment about redevelopment being a better generator. In the bulk table calculations that were considered, I see some problems, and I'll take that up in writing since we have some time. But I don't believe that those are complete, and I think that we're going to have to pay attention to some of that. And I want to make a final comment related to the turnout tonight, and my past request that we put these really important public hearings on the website, on the homepage, and the status. I was actually getting phone calls. I don't know if this was brought up by anybody else. I got 3 phone calls, or 2 phone calls and an email, that there were people walking around the surrounding neighborhood telling people that tonight's meeting was canceled because of the weather. I think you guys in the town got some phone calls to confirm that it was still on. And I said, of course, that's silly. People, you should come out. You guys are not going to cancel it, and besides, it's not bad weather. But what I really would love to say to them is just look at the homepage. If this, it's going to be there, the status should be there. I keep on telling you guys, Don't hide this stuff. It's important. We want to be transparent. Make it easier for us. This is a free thing. The website's free. You guys own it. It's just not that hard to do it, and I would really implore you to take advantage of these free communications that the town of Ramapo has. The last thing I want to say is there are comments that are being made in these documents, that are sort of meant to justify that this is going to be this big kind of area cleanup. And to be quite honest, I'm looking at these pictures that are, these are the rundown pictures. Look at all these terrible rundown, look at the rundown street. And I'm looking at them going, that's pretty darn beautiful. That's pretty darn representative of the town of Ramapo. You got some streets that maybe still don't have some asphalt, or driveways without asphalt, some older single-family homes maybe somebody should have been painting. Do we have a problem? I mean, are there people not paying their taxes? Are there homes that are condemned in this particular area? I did not get that impression. I didn't see real analysis of what is this blight, because I drove around the area and I didn't see blight. I saw a really nice community tucked in along a river resource with riparian buffers. That obviously was going to have some development, and I see a developer who could have built it out according to some pretty decent approvals that you guys gave him a few years ago, and we could have had a lot more taxes had that been done years ago. And I think people would be a lot happier, and there'd be a lot less confrontation. And I keep telling you, I'm all for less confrontation. I think we all have to do what we need to do to, make space for everyone in this town, but we got to do it right, and we got to do it without confrontation, and we got to do it in an organized fashion that is just easily accessible to the public. That's how the town of Ramapo is going to be great again. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Come right up.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Supervisor, members of the board. My name is Amelia White. I live at 10 Garden Place, Spring Valley, New York. I'm a Spring Valley Village trustee, but tonight I'm here as a resident from Spring Valley and a taxpayer. I've heard many people say that this project is necessary because there are many people who are in need of homes. I agree that people do need homes, but the people, as I've heard today and many other times, the people who already live in these their current homes need to be protected too. And the neighbors, the neighboring areas need to have their rights. If we have to make sure that people get homes, they have a place to live, and we're not worried about the people who spend their money and took time to look for a place that was suitable for them and their families, then how are we representing our constituents? I think Spring Valley is similar to this board, the board of Ramapo, because in the past, I got elected in November of last year, so I'm new to the board, but in the past, Spring Valley had been the yes board, I call, and this board is also the yes board. Everything is yes, yes, no questions asked. This year, I was the shoe was in the other foot, because usually I'm in the audience saying, please, my house is being destroyed because the neighbor's renting, because somebody bought the house next to me and the neighbor's renting, but the neighbor doesn't live there, and I have ugly fence that was put up, and people, they park 10, 12 cars on the grass, and then when I called the village, the code enforcer told the people put gravel on it and it'd be okay. So I get no right. So this year I was able to, I listened to the people because one of my biggest concerns was every time I went before the board, the Spring Valley Board, I think the only person that paid attention and looked at me is then Trustee Anthony Leon. He's the deputy mayor. He's here now today. But we're not here as representing the board, as I said, because we haven't discussed this project. We haven't talked about it, so I'm here as myself. So that's the only person who looked at me and showed some concern. So I feel that it's my job to pay attention to the people, and I'm there to represent everybody, but I have to listen to the people that have concerns. I haven't heard here that anybody that live around the proposed areas who says, yes, I want this project. If there is anybody that spoke before me I didn't see, I would like to ask them why they want that project, because this is, definitely this project would, I think would, I have to choose my words carefully. This project, if it were to be approved, would destroy, would destroy the East Ramapo Central School District. As it is, right now, so much has been taken away from the students, and it would really, that would be a green light to just destroy the whole district. And I really think you should really listen to the people, because you want new people, but you have people that chose their places to live, because this is where it's like a bird looking for a tree, the best tree. They got the best tree, and then now we don't want any bulldozers to come and take the tree down. So we really would like for you to pay attention to everyone and open your eyes and look at the plan and make a decision that you can go to bed and sleep without wondering, oh my God, what have I done? Did I do something to hurt others? Because you can't help one group and destroy another. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Just raise your hand. Come right up.
Good evening. My name is Emil Ramos, and I live at 8 Witherspoon Drive, which is right across the property along Pascack Road. We are the first street from Mirror Lake, so we essentially will have the biggest impact if the project is approved. All my concerns have been raised during this meeting, and I just want to say to the town board and to the supervisor that I've lived in this area since 1977, and that house was our first house, and it still is. And we're pretty happy where we are. We haven't moved. We love it here. And because of the concerns that have been raised, please, I implore you, disapprove this project and don't hurt us. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who would like to speak at this time? Maybe we should do the supplemental. We'll have all 5 minutes.
Well, Mr. Supervisor, Mr. Lang has provided to the board his recommendation for an EF Part 2. The board could either consider that tonight, or since we're missing two of our board members, the board could decide to delay further consideration of that until the other board members are present. I believe the other board members would have to look at a video or the transcript of today's proceeding before they vote on that. But those are, I believe, the choices that you have this evening.
Well, I think that the board would want to make sure that we have the part two and to have those information gathered that Mr. Lang spoke about in the first part. So why don't we schedule to do the supplemental on our meeting on the 18th? And why don't we adjourn this meeting, this public hearing, until our first meeting in January? And I'll ask our town clerk to give me that date. Do you have that date, Chris?
The second Wednesday in January is the 14th.
Okay, so we will
Mr.
continue
Supervisor?
this? Yes.
Yeah, just, we have yet to schedule the reorganization meeting as well. Some years we do that before the first regularly scheduled meeting, some years we do it on the same night as that meeting. If we're going to schedule this as a continued public hearing, the board should just decide if we want the reorg meeting on the same night as the continued public hearing or not, just because we want to give everybody an opportunity to participate, and that's usually a long agenda.
It is. So why don't we have an extra meeting in January? I agree with you. The reorg meeting is a lengthy meeting. So why don't we have this public hearing on the 14th, and we'll have a meeting on January 7th, the Wednesday before, and we'll have that as our reorg meeting. All right? So later, when we do our agenda, we will set those dates and then vote on those dates. So we will delay the vote on the
EF Part 2?
The EF Part 2 until the 18th of December, and when all 5 members of the board will be here. And we will not take any action, and we will have reconvene the public hearing on January 14th. Okay?
Okay,
Thank you.
motion?
Motion to adjourn until January 14th, moved by Councilwoman Charles, seconded by Councilman Friedman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, carries unanimously. We'll let everybody, if you want to continue to talk with each other, please do it in the hallway so we can continue with the rest of the meeting. Thank you. I'll be right with you. You ready?
Whenever you're ready.
Okay. All right, we're back on with our meeting, and we're going to take things out of order here. Okay, we're going to take things out of order because I know people have been waiting for public participation, so we'll do that right now. So we will take on public participation. Who would like to speak? Well, I think we're going to let Mr. Schutte come up first.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. And I would like to wish everyone here a Merry Christmas and a Happy Hanukkah.
State your name and address, please.
Sure. It is Roy Chudy, 16 Lonigan Drive in Suffern.
Thank you.
Before I speak about what I wanted to speak, I'd like to address something else after attending this meeting tonight. Whether one agrees or disagrees with a person or a statement, that individual should do so with a little respect and without vitriol. I was embarrassed tonight to listen to some of this. You can make a point without being mean or nasty. We're all God's children. Nobody has to speak like that without respect. I think that's terrible. And I'm going to say something else. If anybody noticed, there were children, there were students here today. So Civics 101 went out the window. That was terrible. That was a terrible example to set. There was even an individual sitting here giving high fives to people who were doing this vitriol. That's terrible. There's no decorum, there's no respect shown, and there's no self-respect. And that's now how business should be ever conducted. People who want to run for office, then you run for office, and if you are elected to that office, you would deserve the same respect. You treat others like you want to be treated. You can agree to disagree. And I'm going to tell you, that was embarrassing to me. And as a Vietnam veteran, which I am proud to say, I have faced the enemy. And I know what an enemy looks like. This is not an enemy. This is something that you can still discuss and try and make your point without the vitriol. It was terrible. And I found it embarrassing. High-fiving, and I thought it was disgraceful, to be truthful. On to what I wish to talk about, which is a very serious problem. It's been an ongoing problem, and I know it's also well known to everybody here. And that is, I want to address the flooding issue that's especially hit hard to Squires Gate area and the surrounding areas. On March 7, 2011, Supervisor St. Lawrence did come to the village of Suffern, and he addressed a host of issues. And speaking of which was the Suffern Quarry, and he spoke about that was gifted to the town in December of '06. In part of the statements, it was also, we would talk, the supervisor spoke about the siphoning plan that was designed by Brooker Engineers, that both the town and the village, their main goal is flood mitigation. Now, Quarry Ridge was going to pay for the siphon and the park that they would donate if this was done, but it would be based on the approval to build and develop in that area. So a contract of sale with Quarry Ridge for the sale of the former Tilcon Quarry, which was donated to the town, consisted of approximately 61 acres for future use as residential development, of 440 units, flood mitigation project, and a park. The town board voted to amend and adopt in July 11, 2011, via voice vote, Resolution 2011-438, which was a project revision on Quarry Ridge, which reduced it to 11 acres, and the units to be constructed would be reduced to 250. One of the questions I would like to ask is, was the project ever presented to the village in its entirety?
The applicant had meetings, the developer who wanted to do this, who had the rights to do it, went to the village and made presentations, but I don't believe a formal application was ever made. Michael, could you?
Well, I know there were definitely meetings with the village board and the planning board. It never moved beyond a certain point, and it's my understanding that the village was not looking favorably upon the development proposal.
But there was no formal development made, and it would just dissipate it? It just
Well,
went...
I believe they met with the village board and they met with the planning board, and it's at least my understanding, and again, the town, since it's a land use issue with the village, the town basically kept its distance and let the village decide how it wanted its own land to be developed. We certainly wanted the project to move forward, and certainly that was a way of funding the siphon project, which we had designed by Brooker Engineering as part of that process. But it was my understanding from conversations with the developer that it was not being looked favorably upon by the village, and therefore didn't proceed.
But I will say this, we have a application. I know that the village received about $3 million for flood and what they want to do with that's in their court. But we have an application in to the DEC through FEMA that is really right on top of the pile. We're checking it and pushing it all the time. And we hope to hear from that, and we will be using that money to put in the siphons and to do the project.
We had requested about $5 million, and it's our understanding that there was supposed to be a decision on that after the beginning of November, but we're still waiting.
I'm going to be in Albany tomorrow because the governor's going to be announcing the regional council winners for the 10 regions in the state, and I will be talking about where our application is on this, because it is somewhat folded into that, because we're dealing with a lot of the same agencies. And we did get the DEC to back us on this with the federal government. So, you know, we also had other monies that we'd received at one time from Congressman Engel, about $170,000, and then when the Mississippi River went into their situation with the drought, all the money was taken away from all the projects and put into that project. So we lost that. We've spoken to Congresswoman Nita Lowey about helping us push on that as well. But we're very confident that, very hopeful, and with a high confidence that we were going to be able to get that $5 million, which is separate from the $3 million that is going to the village.
I have been on top of this. I'm pretty much versed on this.
I know you are, and I appreciate the work that you guys have been doing as well.
Yeah, well, thank you, but, you know, what I want to say to address that $5 million, that was in June of 13, that was, the application went in, and I've even contacted the head of OEM, Richard Lord, and all I get is, well, there's a lot of applications out there, and then I've did some research, and they say you're on step 6. Well, you know, step 6 is great if there's 6 steps. Yeah, but if it's step 6 of 100, I mean, they don't tell me. So it's very clandestine. They don't want anybody to know. So you know, if it's
I will tell you, Roy, it is a chutes and ladders type of, like a chutes and ladder board.
Right.
And we have completed a very good portion of that. We feel very confident that we are in the pile that is going to be worked upon.
Well, I have seen a lot of that paper.
And one last thing, also just this week, we've been down, we are going to put in a tremendous amount of money, even though it's not in the town of Ramapo, right there in the Mawa River, right across from Avon. going in toward the quarry, that erosion that took place on the east side of the Mawa there. And we're going to be going in there and cleaning that up. And I think it's a project of about $380,000, Michael. I think that's about what it is.
Yeah, that's correct. It's reestablishing the bank.
And we're paying for that.
Well, I'm sure you
And
know.
we're paying for, we hope that we'll be reimbursed by FEMA, but we're laying the money out from that. Then we'll go after them for that. But we did get an approval to go forward with that project, but we're putting the funds up and doing that. You know, I'm not saying that that's going to change the flow. It's not going to do what the siphons do, but it is just upstream from Squires Gate there.
Yeah, I've seen the Brooker engineer. I've seen many of his dialogue, and you know, I think it's great. Right now, we sit there, people who are actually, their homes in foreclosure. People are walking away from their homes, and the moral impact, the personal impact, to see an individual, a parent, actually cry in front of their children when you've lost half your house is something that shouldn't be. And you know, even I've spoken with Vince Altieri from the drainage, and to be truthful, and I kind of scolded him because he says it's our fault. You should have known. You shouldn't have bought in a flood area, and that was not accepted too well by the folks that live in this area. I can retort, well, you know, you can't buy what shouldn't have been built, you know, and tit for tat and all that, but you're supposed to move forward. You're not supposed to use revisionist history. Mm-hmm. Nothing gets done. So you know, and we've been promised and promised and promised in that area, and it's always, oh, the Army Corps. There are more reasons that nothing is done than gets done. But the $3 million that was given to the village, I can tell you, I was initially part of that board. I divested myself for personal reasons on that. But I can tell you that none of that $3 million is going to be used for the quarry. Not one penny. Not one penny of that $3 million is going to be used for Squires Gate. So,
well, I would think that would be shameful.
It is shameful. There's no doubt about it. But I attend every meeting, and there's others who have attended the meeting who will tell you that they came in and they managed to speak with the board of folks that are elected onto this onto their committee, and they're going to be using it for other diverse, you know, projects, smaller projects. So their excuse being that the quarry project is expensive in the fact 5 to 6 million. You're only getting 3 million. It wouldn't cover it. Yada yada yada. So they're using it in other areas, which I think is it's ridiculous. But again, I believe they were led down that path by the state engineers. Again, I ask, outside of grant money, is there any way that we can have an emissary, if possible, between the town and the village? We have a new board, elected board in the village, and I speak with them, and they are more than willing to sit and meet with our town elected officials and try and find a way that outside of even grant money, maybe through private enterprise, whatever, that they can come up with some kind of funding that can initiate at least a siphoning plan. If nothing is going to be built there and it's just sitting there, maybe at least just for that, just to help people and to actually save people.
I'll tell you what,
it would be a wonderful thing.
I think that's a good suggestion, and I want you to know, too, that we did get Tilcon to do an incredible regrading and cleaning up of the site, and we fought hard for that. Why don't we do this? Right after the holidays in January, why don't we reach out to you, to your group, and I'll reach out to the village, and why don't we have a little forum here We can televise it so other people can see it, and we can kind of see if we can all work together. So why don't we do that and set that up for January?
I appreciate that.
Okay.
I would look forward to that, and thank you for that offer. And I'm sure the new trustees and the current mayor would agree to that too.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Roy. Thank you. And thanks for your patience. Richard, yes. He took care of all your...
Frustrated.
I know you are.
But he said it in a much more diplomatic and better way. Now, my thing was to come down here and ask you what your about the flood. Excuse me.
Give me your name and address, please.
Rich Karp, K-A-R-P-P, 88 Lonigan Drive.
Thanks.
Right next to the houses that were taken down.
Yep.
What you were doing with the flood mitigation, or lack of what's going on with the flood mitigation. I mean, even today, when the water's getting up, there's people going down there and looking. We've been very lucky so far.
Yep.
We lost 4 houses. Knock on wood, thank the man upstairs. Nobody was even hurt, and there's been no death. And especially when those houses went down, everybody's so afraid of the next time. And what Roy said, people have left their houses, have gone someplace else because they can't take any more flooding. So, but now, I guess you two guys, you answered the question of what's going on. So,
We'll keep pushing, and in January, we'll get an update as to where we are with the $5 million that we requested from the state.
and there's
federal
something
government.
else, maybe you can get in touch with the drainage department or something about the river. On the bank on the other side that goes 20, 30 feet up, that is full of trees, garbage, everything that people throw over. And every time the water gets up, all that stuff comes down, blocks the...
We are
right
going
by
to
the
be
bridge.
stabilizing from the bridge on 59, going north on the east side, all the way up to the quarry there, and we're going to be
I'm
cleaning that
I'm
and stabilizing.
talking about...
You're talking further up.
Right.
Further
Right
down,
there,
further
yes,
down.
right past
They
my
did. The
house.
county
They
did
didn't-
come into their credit one time and clean some of that up, but it fills up again.
No,
And-
we did that ourselves, Mr.
Oh,
Shuley.
oh, that's right. It was you
Yeah,
guys that did that.
We did it ourselves.
Yeah.
We took about 20, 30 truckloads of stuff out. But we had no heavy equipment or anything like that. And the people on the other side, all they do is, you can see trees over there. It's a big garbage pit.
Do you mean the people that live on Riverside?
Right, on Hillside.
On Hillside
And we've
and
been-
Riverside?
We've been after the village to do something. The village says, if it's your property, you're responsible to keep it clean. My property is goes into the river, so I keep in back of my house, the same as everybody else, clean. Or do the same thing with the people up there. And like you were talking about the development that's going to be with the, I'm not going to say a quiet discussion you had.
Yeah, right.
That's something that sounds like what should have been before they built Squires Gate. A lot of the trees are just hanging on by 1 or 2 roots. And every time it rains, more dirt comes off, and it's sooner or later, the trees are going to come down, somebody's going to get hurt.
I want you to know, I was at a meeting before Squires Gate was built on them getting the ability to build Squires Gate. And I was there with my father, and he was saying, you can't build this, it's in a floodplain, and people will just be flooded out. And that was back in 62, I think it was. And the village decided, no, they're going to build in the floodplain. I think Mayor Rice was the mayor at the time, James Rice. And they built it. But people live there, and as Mr. Schutte said, and as you said, and I saw the houses next to you where
Right.
they knocked right off the foundation and cracked.
I spoke to you a couple of days afterwards.
And it's just, time goes on and we forget about it, and then it's going to happen again. That's the thing. It is going to happen again. It's not a matter of, oh, this happened, what a terrible thing that happened. No, it's going to happen again.
Yeah.
And we need to really step up our efforts to make the state and the federal government realize if they give us this $5 million, we can go ahead and put the siphoning in, and whatever else happens on the property, the rest of the property, that's beside the point.
Well, that's not going to stop the flooding, but it's going to alleviate
But it's
a lot
going
of
to
it.
take people and put them into more of a 25-year floodplain. I think that's
Right.
what Brooker's report said, that 90% of the homes there will go into the 25-year floodplain. So
Good.
that will be good. Unfortunately, the 25-year floodplain these days,
I know.
you know,
We're in 100 years.
we're in 100 years and we get it every 4 years.
40
So.
years, we had 4 floods.
Yeah,
Okay,
but it
thank
does,
you.
it will give a certain bit where you don't need to worry about every rain, but I hear
Oh,
you.
no, it's not
Yeah.
going to, nobody expected, nobody does expect it to.
But it can
stop
take the top of that flood
Instead
off.
of getting 4 or 5 feet of water, you might get 2 feet of water.
Yep.
Or on certain times, instead of getting 2 feet, you might get a couple of inches. That's all people want, a fighting chance.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Thank you.
Mr.
Thank you,
Supervisor.
Richard. You're welcome.
Hi, good evening. Ed Marcunis, 2 Willow Drive, Suffering.
Congratulations.
I thank you.
Or condolences.
Ask me in another month or so.
That's right, that's right.
Well, I'm here to-
Our newest trustee in the village of
Yes,
Suffolk.
thank you. I'm here to support Roy and Rich here in their quest for this $5 million for the siphoning system, due to the fact that they've suffered through these floods, the damages, the possible loss of life going forward, that we urge the town of Ramapo to pursue this money and to pursue the siphoning system. If this could, benefit, we have 140 homes down there, is that correct? 140 homes. So there's a huge potential for more damage, as you stated, in the future, possible home damage, loss of life, whatever it is. We need to correct this condition. With your help, hopefully we can get that money and install a siphoning system.
Great. And I look forward to working with you on this, and we'll
Great.
start right off at the beginning of the year.
Sounds good. Thank
Great.
you very much.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you. Anybody else? Robert, did you want to speak? Come right up.
Robert Romanowski, 183 Maple Avenue, Monsey. I just want to make a comment, too, about the flooding in Squires Gate. As I understand, it cost $5 million to do this project, to put the siphons in and everything. Why doesn't the town just pay and have this done right now to get it done with, so that, isn't the people's property, lives, and their possessions important? I don't see why the town couldn't do this. You spend $38 million in taxpayer money on the stadium. Is that more important than people's property and lives and their possessions and what's going on in Squires Gate, or having people crying in front of their children? I really think you should really think about your priorities here and the way you do things. Thank you.
Well, I just want you to know, Robert, that this town board has made taken as a priority as well, that not only putting in the siphon, but we will pay for the ongoing maintenance of it and the energy to run it and the cleaning out on it, and would take that responsibility and not put it on the village. And I think that Brooker's engineering is very good, and we would preclude ourselves from getting the funding if we did it ourselves. We wouldn't be able to get that funding. And Robert, pretty sure that we're getting close to the top of the pile there, but we will get everybody together, and we'll keep banging the appropriate desk in Albany and in Washington. Okay. Yes, sir. And then you're next.
Mr. Supervisor.
Hey, how are you?
Clerk, attorney, members. Frank Hagan, Dunnery Court, Suffering.
Welcome, and congratulations to you, too.
Thank you. Maybe I'll make mayor soon.
Maybe.
I'll just keep going. But I would like to back Mr. Schuette's, all his efforts, and I would look forward to talking to you in January also.
Great.
About the siphoning system and anything else the town can do for the village. It's reciprocal. We do the same thing for you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Frank. Thank you.
I would just reiterate Bob Romanowski's comments about, what has taken so long. You just told us you were at a meeting when you were a child with your father about this issue, and you knew that this issue existed before you became supervisor. And what has taken so long? I mean, we spent, Bob says 32, it's been $72 million on the stadium, and you fast-tracked that, cut through all the red tape, and you made that happen. I'm surprised that something has not been done on this a long time ago. And if you're finally going to meet with them and get it done, well, that's great, but it should have happened a long time ago. Thank you.
Anybody else like to speak? Come right up.
Sam Generone, 73 East Maple, Suffern. I was thrilled to see progress at the entrance to the quarry north of Route 59. I saw on the agenda tonight that Conserve Construction was awarded the contract. They did the work on the west bank adjacent to the Avon truck entrance. I believe that was funded by FEMA, correct?
Yes.
$300,000.
And now that we've gotten the approval by FEMA, we lay the money out, and then since they've approved it, then they will reimburse us after we're done.
And what is the value of that contract on the east bank from 59 up to the railroad trestle, I assume?
Yeah, and Michael looked up that. I thought it was 280 or 380, I'm not sure.
Let's see. It's 5A on the agenda.
I would also like to find out what the change order is.
$416,000.
For?
416.
416.
The change order, when the project was originally proposed, it was $325,000. In the 2 years that have ensued since then, there's been further deterioration requiring additional embankment
Yes.
work. So that's the difference.
416. Was that?
So there's site clearing involved in that, and there's earthwork, that's about $91,000 alone, and...
Yeah, that's fine.
Yep,
We
it's
didn't
all laid
know
out
the,
here.
details.
I can give you a copy of this if you
That
like.
would be great. I would love to have that and distribute that in the village. Thank you, Supervisor. One other question. Was there an RPF sent out for this work on the East Bank?
Yes, this was done about right after Sandy, when this went out. Yep.
And
This was the lowest
is
bidder.
there a list of contractors in here to bid on the project?
We can get you that, who bid on it.
Because as far as I know, the work on the East Bank, the West Bank, adjacent to the Avon truck entrance, was declared an emergency and was awarded to Conserve Construction in a no-bid contract. Am I correct in saying that?
Yes, it may have been exactly the same side for both sides of the river, and the governor allowed that to be done so that they could be done streamlined with FEMA.
So was the work that's going to take place in the next couple of weeks put out to bid or no?
Well, it was done, I believe, at the exact same time and under the emergency, but I'll check that for you.
Yeah, and I don't remember the procurement process, but it followed whatever requirements we had in state law. Whether it was an emergency then or was competitively bid, I don't recall.
Who should I speak to concerning that at a later
I
date?
guess Mike Riley, our intergovernmental agency person, has been in charge of all
Mike Riley.
those FEMA projects, so.
Thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome. Okay, anybody else in the public like to speak? Motion to close public participation. Moved by Charles, second by Councilman Friedman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, carries unanimously. Next item on the agenda is adoption of the minutes for the November 12th meeting. Moved by Charles, seconded by Friedman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, carries unanimously. Item 1B is the minutes for the November 30th meeting. Moved by Charles, seconded by Friedman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, carries unanimously. The next item on the agenda is the town attorney, Mr. Klein.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. We have 10 different agreements for approval tonight. The first of these is for building inspection services rendered by the town for the Village of Montebello for the 2015 calendar year.
Friedman?
Moved by Councilman Friedman, second by Councilwoman Charles. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously.
Similarly, the next resolution is for building and zoning services by the town for the Village of New Hempstead for calendar year 2015.
Friedman?
Moved by Councilman Friedman, second by Councilwoman Charles. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously.
The next resolution is for an agreement with the Village of Chestnut Ridge whereby the town will provide building inspection services and building plan review for calendar year 2015.
Friedman?
Moved by Councilman Friedman, second by Councilwoman Charles. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously.
Each year, we approve a dog control services contract. This next resolution approves that for the villages of Pomona, Chestnut Ridge, Kaiser, Sloatsburg, Hilburn, and Airmont for the year 2015.
Moved by Councilwoman Charles, seconded by
Friedman?
Councilman Friedman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously.
A contract for highway maintenance and snow removal services for the villages of Chestnut Ridge, Pomona, New Hempstead, Wesley Hills, Kaiser, Montebello, New Square is the subject of the next resolution.
Friedman?
Moved by Councilman Friedman, second by Councilwoman Charles. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously.
Various not-for-profit organizations contract each year with the town to use our fueling services. The next resolution continues that for 2015.
And villages and fire districts as well.
That's
Moved by
Friedman?
Councilman Friedman, second by Councilwoman Charles. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously.
The next resolution approves grants to different not-for-profit agencies that provide services in the town of Ramapo.
Moved by Councilwoman Charles, seconded by
Friedman?
Councilman Friedman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously.
Each year, we enter into agreements for the use of the town of Ramapo's firing range by different agencies. This includes Clarkstown, the Sheriff's Department, and various other towns and villages, as well as the U.S. Marshal Service. This resolution continues those agreements for calendar year 2015.
Moved by Councilwoman Charles, second by Councilman Friedman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously.
The next resolution approves an agreement by which the town will be reimbursed a little more than $13,000 for overtime expenses for counterterrorism training.
Moved by Councilman Charles, second by Councilman Friedman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously.
And each year, the Town of Ramapo Housing Authority contracts with the town for the town to conduct 500 Section 8 housing inspections. The next resolution also continues that through calendar year 2015.
Moved by
Friedman?
Councilman Friedman, second by Councilwoman Charles. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously.
The next three resolutions involve settlements of litigation matters. The first of these is a tax certiorari matter. It involves a property owner named Congregation Ziev HaTorah of Monsey.
Moved by Councilwoman Charles, seconded by Councilman Friedman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously.
The town is a litigant with a property owner and a neighboring property owner involving an Article 78 proceeding challenging a ZBA decision. All parties have reached a settlement in court, and the next resolution approves of that court-ordered settlement.
So this is Poussette Dart versus the town of Ramapo, and it's all been settled.
That's correct.
Okay. Moved by Councilwoman Charles, second by Councilman Friedman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously.
And finally, we have a settlement of a personal injury claim involving a fall on a town playground. This has been authorized by the town's insurance carrier and requires the approval of the town board as well.
Moved by Councilwoman Charles, second by Councilman Friedman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. The next item on the agenda is an approval for a leave of absence for Mary Steinberger. She will take a leave with no pay. Moved by Councilwoman Charles, seconded by
Friedman.
Councilman Friedman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. We're rejecting the bid that came in on the dry cleaning and laundering of the police uniforms. Moved by Councilwoman Charles, seconded by
Friedman.
Councilman Friedman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. Acceptance of the proposal for pentamation upgrade on the SunGuard public sector. Software. Moved by Councilwoman Charles, seconded by Councilman Friedman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. The next item on the agenda is approval of the change order for repairs to the Marlborough River Embankment Conserve Construction in the Village of Suffern. Moved by Councilman Friedman, seconded by Councilwoman Charles. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. Then, on the general matters, 5B is approval of consultant Michael Smith for the Town of Round Jazz Workshop conducted in the summer. Moved by Councilwoman Charles, seconded by Councilman Friedman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. Use of the Suffern Quarry by the Rockland County REACT team. This will be to utilize the Suffern Quarry for an explosive breaching training on December 17th. Moved by Councilwoman Charles, seconded by Councilman Friedman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. Establishment of credit card convenience fee in the town clerk's office. Moved by Councilwoman Charles, seconded by Councilman Friedman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. Approval of a liquor license for Town Square Steakhouse LLC. Moved by Councilwoman Charles, seconded by Councilman Friedman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. Motion to adjourn? Moved by Councilwoman Charles, seconded by Councilman Friedman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you all very much. We are adjourned.